Okay, start time at 7:03. Commissioner Dye,
Present?
Commissioner Duggan.
Yep.
Commissioner Herring,
Present.
Commissioner Glasser,
Here.
Vice Chair Reese,
Present.
Chair Williams,
Here.
and I will note Cornell as absent and Chris when he shows up,
And Tom.
and Tom.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we've got full agenda tonight, so let's move on quickly here to the approval of the minutes from the November meeting. So does anyone have any comments or?
I was going to make a motion to approve.
Okay,
I second. This
Okay.
Commissioner Reese.
Still have to
Is
say
it?
the name ahead of time.
it wouldn't hurt to do that
All right.
for the record.
Commissioner Glasser,
Yes.
Commissioner Herring,
Yes.
Chair Williams,
Yes.
Vice Chair Reese,
Yes.
Commissioner Dye.
Yes.
Did I ask everyone?
Great
Yes.
job on the minutes. It really captured
Mhm.
everything.
Yep. They were long. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, do we have anyone from the public who wishes to speak on anything that's not on the agenda this evening? Now is the time. You'll have 3 minutes. Anybody? Anybody online? Okay. Having heard nothing, we'll close public comment on non-agenda items and move into our discussion items. So I'd like to remind everybody, public and commissioners, that these are discussion items tonight. We're not going to be voting on anything, but we felt it was important to get some feedback, not only from the potential applicants, but also from the public. So we have 3 discussion items on the agenda tonight. And the first one is the comprehensive plan project and the stakeholder engagement plan review. And I don't know if Miranda, you're going to introduce it?
Sure, yep. So we actually have Gabby Buller on from SE Group. So just a reminder, the town of Nederland applied for energy and mineral impact grant funds to do a comprehensive plan. It's time for an update. Our last one was from 2013. We met with a series of consultants, but ultimately landed on SE Group. The really great thing about SE Group is they were actually the ones who worked on our 2013 plan. So it's nice to have them here for the update. Gabby and her team recently met with department heads and the board of trustees to review scope of work and timeline and public engagement strategy. They will continuously come before the Planning Commission every other month to provide you updates as well. And so this is really your first one, and I'd love to turn it over to Gabby to take it off from here.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Great, perfect. So what I would like to do tonight is go over 2 documents that are going to guide our work for the course of the project. One is the project plan, and then the other one is the engagement plan. Please feel free to ask questions as we go through. It's a lot of information. And as Miranda said, we don't have an advisory committee for this project, but we will have regular updates with the Planning Commission, the board, and various staff department or department heads throughout the course of the project to make sure that we're getting the right feedback that we need and can continue to move along. So I'm going to share my screen that has those documents.
These also in the packet? There's in the packet that she's going to
Did you
show.
put those in the packet, Miranda?
Yeah, the ones you sent us. Yep.
Okay. Great. So are you seeing the screen?
Yeah, Gabby,
you seeing
because
it?
it's because it's the TVs on the wall in the multipurpose room we're in, it's very small for them, but they have it in the
Okay, but you
packet.
have the packets in front of you.
Yep. But they have all reviewed the packets. So
Okay. Okay. So if you can't read it up there, at least you have it in front of you. So
yeah,
don't worry
but
about that.
those online should be able to see it pretty well. It's just people in the room.
Okay. Okay. So first, I'd like to just start with the purpose of a comprehensive plan, which you probably all know, but it's always worth revisiting to remind ourselves why we're doing all of this, is that it's really a long range document for your community to help make decisions, to come together and agree on vision and values, and to also, reflect on what's gone well and what hasn't gone well and look for opportunities over the next, let's call it 10 years across all topic areas from land use and zoning to economic development to transportation to sustainability to open space and trails. So I like to think of comprehensive plans as a mile wide and an inch deep, with the exception of spending a little bit more time on land use and zoning. So we actually came to Nederland for our first of many visits. What was that? November? It was the week after Christmas, after Thanksgiving, I believe. We met with staff department heads, we met with the board of trustees, and there was a lot of really good feedback about what worked and what didn't work about the current comprehensive plan, in that it was like great on the vision and values, not so great on the consistency across topic areas, being useful as a decision making tool, or vague in some places. So we've definitely taken that feedback, and our goal is to try to produce a document that's maybe a little more precise, and a little bit more useful as you make decisions as a planning body and as a community. So continuing the project plan. So we just wanted to lay out kind of who we're working with throughout the project. Our key points of contact at the town are going to be Miranda, Peter, and Britt. These are the team members that from our firm that are going to be primarily working on the project. And then we are working with Studio Seed, a woman named Cheney Bostic, who is an urban designer, and her focus is going to really be the downtown sub-area plan. That's like kind of an add-on or part of this project. And then Fair and Piers, the transportation firm that's also doing the transportation master plan, which I hope you've participated in. They're a couple of months into that project already. So there'll be some really good synergy of collaborating on the findings and the research they're doing for the transportation plan and incorporating those back into the comprehensive plan. We've also worked with many people to come up with this list of partners. And we've been adding to this over the last couple of weeks. And our goal is to make sure they're involved to various degrees, that they are invited to all the public engagement events, that they can give feedback, and probably not for all partners, but for a lot of them, we'll want to do kind of deeper conversations around certain topic areas about what they think is going well or what needs to change. The timeline for the project is about a year. So you can see about maybe 15 months. So we're here in December, right on track. The star is this meeting right here where we're updating you, the Planning Commission, and we're going to continue to work on our research and analysis over the course of the winter. But I want you all to get the date of, is it the 25th, Miranda, that we decided?
Yes, I think
23rd.
so.
23rd. I
23rd.
knew it was that week.
Yeah.
23rd, thank you. That's in the other document. That's in the engagement plan, where we're going to have our first, big open house. And one thing we've been doing, and I'm not sure if any of you, but I assume some of you were involved with the Envision 2030 process. So one of our goals with that is to revisit all that information and make sure that it's not, left behind, but really incorporate that into this existing conditions, vision, values phase, because there was a lot of good work that went on with that process. And so we want to fold it into the first phase of the comp plan process. And so we'll ask some questions about whether people still agree with the direction of the Envision 2030, how we build recommendations off of that work. And, you know, if people weren't involved in that, then they have a fresh lens and they can give us their feedback from that. So some key dates, that's what I was just talking about, this visioning open house in January. We are starting to organize ourselves for a series of stakeholder meetings and interviews throughout the rest of the winter. Once we've done some of our research, we're planning on doing some deeper dive workshops on up to two topic areas. Maybe that's economic development, maybe that's sustainability. We don't really quite know yet. Maybe it's water. With the goal of having a draft plan ready to go for September. So again, our project plan, this is what we're looking at right now. That's completed. This is the second document I'm about to show you, this engagement plan. We're going to also be working through an audit of the previous plan of like what we want to bring from the old plan, what ideas still resonate, and what things we don't want to bring from the old plan. We're also working on an updated set of base maps. So we'll have some really good maps that show, you know, the downtown sub area in a lot of detail. They'll show the 3 mile area, so Nederland and 3 miles outside of town. They'll show transportation facilities. They'll show land ownership. So we've just started our work on that with the data gathering. And then with our work with Cheney Bostic, we'll have this central business district sub area. It's almost like a chapter, its own chapter of the plan, ready to go for July. Here's some of the other deliverables in the project is looking at the land use and zoning code. So, you know, maybe not this meeting, but maybe one of our future meetings, I would love to have a discussion with this group about like in your decision making and in your using of the code for day-to-day things, like what do you wish was different about it? What's working well? We'll definitely want to talk about that with this group. And then we'll have 2 drafts of a plan, a final plan, and then hopefully adopting the plan this time next year. So this is just reiterating the scope of work. I don't need to go into that in too much detail, but you have this so that you kind of know the course of the project. Feel free to ask any questions about it and keep us accountable to make sure that we're staying on track. Are there any questions about the scope or the project plan? Right now, I'll pause for a minute.
Yes, this is Commissioner Reese. I just was wondering if I missed it while I was trying to get my computer pulled up to where you're at. Did you say whether or not you'd already had the first community engagement meeting?
We had a day where we met with staff, but that I'm not counting that as like our first big engagement. We did have one of our staff tag along to the I don't know what you guys called it, like the Christmas market on December 2nd.
Holiday.
The holiday
market. Yeah.
The holiday market, thank you. So we did tag along to that with the transportation planner team, but that was mostly focused on the transportation plan. But we're having our first engagement for this project at the end of January.
Okay, that's all I was checking because I didn't
Yep.
get a chance to come, so I would like to attend. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions about what I've presented so far?
Yeah, Commissioner Tim Duggan here. Not that it's specifically critically important. I was just curious. I imagine like the technology behind GIS data mapping has improved a lot in the last 10 years. What amount of like the budget, if you will, is going towards just like improving our mapping of GIS data that we're using for the plan versus more just conceptual policy kind of stuff?
Aiden, maybe you could check that while I'm presenting. We do have like a line item for it's kind of gray because we have a
Sure.
line item to produce a set of maps that will kind of update. Like the maps in the old plan are so funny. They really like typify what GIS was like in 2013.
Right.
And like not only will it make them look better, like hopefully there's way better data. But then there's like over the course of building the plan out and analyzing each topic area and coming up with recommendations, there'll be additional spatial analysis that is also a GIS thing, but isn't necessarily like part of that mapping task, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I
So
have
it's
it.
not like that straightforward.
I can provide, this is Aiden, by the way. Sorry, I was assuming a 7:15 start, but I'm glad that we're getting to this early. The base maps themselves, it looks like we have about $7,500 set aside to collect data, create initial base maps, and then create a series of maps that might be able to show us land use, rec assets, more downtown area, some of that zoomed out 3-mile regional plan as well, to make sure that we're really incorporating some of the surrounding land management and thinking here. There's a little bit of extra money for the central business district and downtown area modeling. So if we're feeling that that is really important in this process, we probably elevate those maps a little bit. But to answer your original question, I would say it's about $7,500.
Gotcha, thank you. And yeah, just kind of percentage of effort really is more what I'm asking. And like, I imagine a lot of the maps, you know, if we're just looking at zoning and parcel boundaries and whatnot, I mean, the information is just as accurate from 2013 as it would be now, except we've got better satellite photos. But I assume you guys have got that all planned out as far as what is worth your time and energy and money and what's not to improve a map. I mean,
Yeah. Well, this is Chair Williams. I think as part of that too is all the census information in GIS form, which
yeah,
we didn't have when we did the previous comprehensive plan.
yeah.
And it would be good if all of the maps or the data, the GIS database went to the town as part of a deliverable.
Totally. Yeah, for another project we're working on, we did some pretty cool analysis where we took the most recent census data and we had certain things like broken out by tract. So in this community, for example, like there were way more homeowners on the northwest side of town and way more renters on the east side of town. And then like consequently, those homeowners tended to be older. So like when you broke it down by age across town and by homeowner renter status, like you could see those differences. So we're really excited to be able to dig into that more recent data and like see how there's certain kind of like socioeconomic factors are spatially distributed. And it'll be interesting. There might be stuff that's like, oh yeah, I already knew that, but like there might be some interesting findings as well.
Yeah, I think that'll be a good improvement and just interesting and helpful data that we didn't necessarily have 10 years ago.
Good, thank you.
These are
Any
great
other
questions. Any
questions?
more questions?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll finish up the project plan and then I'll hand it over to Aiden to go through the public engagement plan. But I just wanted to talk about our communication protocol. So Miranda's our point of contact, but we also have, certain tasks that we're going to coordinate more closely with Peter or with Britt. And we're also going to meet with this group every 6 to 8 weeks and the Board of Trustees. So we have like a lot of checkpoints. And we will have, making sure that we're complying with the sunshine laws. We'll try to have like everything out to you in the correct format with at least a week of review before our check-in so that you have time to review any materials. And one thing that's been successful for us in these type of checkpoints is to give you like a little survey form that like says, okay, I read the economic development chapter. These are the 2 things I liked about it. These are the 2 things I had questions about it. These are the 2 things I have feedback about. And so that way we're like really organized when we come to your meeting. We don't need to go over it from scratch. We can just really focus on those critical touch points or feedback that we want to focus on. So I just wanted to talk about how we're going to communicate with you And please, as we go through the process, if something's working or not working, let us know so that we can improve it throughout the year that we'll be working together. I think I'm done with the project plan. I can keep sharing, Aiden, if you want to go over the engagement plan.
Yep, I think that makes sense. I just want to ask a question to this group, and it can be on the engagement plan as well. But we have on the schedule our next meeting in February. Is it, Miranda, is it correct that it's the third Wednesday? Or is it 2 times a month?
This is the fourth Wednesday. And I think
Fourth.
you were coming to the planning commission on even months, fourth Wednesday. It's just this month it got moved up because of the holiday.
Oh, okay. I was like, it's not the fourth Wednesday, but
Yeah. What's wrong with that? No, yeah, we
great.
moved it up this month.
Okay. So February 28th would be the next one that
Yeah.
we come to. Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. So I'm mentioning that because at that point we will have the engagement results from our first open house, and I don't know when exactly we'll close the accompanied survey, but I think that'll be a great thing to bring to this group next, and also talk about a few of the subject areas that may not have been covered in the previous plan that you think are maybe of higher importance and relevance now. I will jump in. Gabby, if you could scroll down just a little bit on this first page. So this engagement plan covers both the ways of communicating with the public and also the select public engagement opportunities. So that first page covers for each public engagement opportunity, we will make sure that there is information on the town website. We will also be posting information on the various social media pages that the town controls. We will work to have some sort of a press release or little advertisement blurb in the newspaper. The transportation master plan is using a website called Social Pinpoint. And while we've heard feedback on making sure that people understand the differences between these two processes, we do have the ability to work with Fair and Peers to collect site-specific data through this platform if we decide. So maybe some of the downtown area planning could also use this platform. Okay, I think we're good with that page. Oh, I can't hear you, Gabby.
That second page is a repeat of from the project plan.
Yep, exactly. So it says the partners that we'll be working with and coordinating the open house. So this is the event taking place, I want to say it's between 5 and 7 p.m. on January 23rd. This will be an event held in the community room where we set up a series of boards, posters that cover different focus areas of the plan. So we'll have some recreation, land use, sustainability, economic development, and that's where we're going to go through many of those Envision 2030 vision statements, confirm the relevance still, and also ask if people have anything that they're interested in adding to some of those vision statements. So I think that's a really amazing jumping off point for that work. We will also have an online survey as part of this. We always provide both for engagement events so that people aren't missing out. We'll also have concurrently a slightly more specific stakeholder survey that will go out, and that will be used to form some smaller stakeholder meetings in February and March. So for an economic development group, we'll work with Miranda to collect some emails of people who might be able to give us a little bit more specific feedback concerning economic development or housing or land use, for example.
Yeah, we already had I'm trying to remember her name, Aiden, you have to remind me, but the sustainability coordinator was going on maternity leave. And so we front loaded that conversation and had it last week. And we just got such a wealth of information about what she's been working on and what's worked and what hasn't worked, and what she thinks should go in the new plan. So we've already gotten a little bit ahead on that one.
The next category here is the topic area workshops. These will come after a series of existing conditions memos have been created, where we can really drill down on a couple of key findings that we're seeing from this existing conditions analysis and start to form smaller workshops to dig a little deeper. So that's going to be, ground truthing some of our observations and also workshopping a couple of recommendations and action items that come from that. I want to say land use and recreation were the two that the board were bringing up as things that they felt were really important. But we'll be able to, continue to move that thinking along in the next few months and see if those are still shaking out as the most important topics when it comes to early summer, late spring.
I don't want to count out water. Water might rise to the top too. We'll see.
Right. And then the last of the public engagement opportunities is this draft plan presentation. So once we have some sort of a draft, that will be available. Still kind of working out on the scale and what this might look like, but that is for early fall. I think we'll probably also work with Miranda and Peter to see if any of those existing conditions memos and engagement analysis can go on the website and then people can review that content. I see no issue now, but who knows what will come up in the next few months. But typically we do post that information as it is reviewed and finalized.
This is Chair Williams. So quick question, will you be presenting to the Planning Commission first so you can get our comments before it goes to the board, or is it the other way around? Looking at your timeline schedule, it's kind of hard to tell.
That's a good question. Gabby, what do you think about that?
I mean, how do things typically, I feel like in most of the communities I work with, the Planning Commission has the first pass.
That's correct.
So I think we should follow that. And even if we, finish a deliverable and our next meetings with the board, if that's, if that protocol is important, I think we should wait and have Planning Commission see it first, and then we can summarize those recommendations when we check in with the board and say, okay, this is the content. These were the 3 big things Planning Commission had feedback about. Do you agree with that feedback or not agree with that feedback? The other interesting thing that works somewhat well is that the board elections are is it April? April, correct?
Right.
Yep.
So we are going to have our research phase done, but not really move into recommendation phase until after the board elections. And I think that works well because if there's new people on the board that disagree with the previous people on the board, we're not rewriting the recommendations if they don't like them. So we'll get through the research phase and the initial public engagement, and then the new board members, they'll have to get up to speed, but we'll only be working through the recommendations one time.
Okay.
This proposed schedule, I would say, was like a approach that we thought might work, especially if the board is doing a lot of onboarding and getting up to speed in that May timeframe. We may be able to switch the order at that point, which would then make sure that we can meet with the Planning Commission in early September, or actually the 4th Wednesday of September. We can click.
It just strengthens your
Paperwork in
presentation
September.
to the board if you get input from the Planning Commission first, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
maybe we'll add that to the document.
Thank you.
I'm going to keep moving. That's the end.
Yep, that is it. So if there are any other questions about the timing of things and, the content of certain meetings, this is a great time. But we put this timeline together, to meet some of the initial deadlines and expectations in the RFP. We do have some flexibility. There is no specific, hard stop at the end of December. And things always come up. So yeah, just know that we're really flexible on which meetings we're attending, and it doesn't need to be every other month if that's not making sense.
Okay. Any other questions at this point? I'm sure we will as this process continues. Any comments from town staff on anything or at this point? No? Okay. Well, Gabby and company, thank you so much.
Thank you. We're really excited to work with you.
Updating. We're looking forward to it. This is great. Last time we did this, I was actually on the planning commission. We did this before and we didn't have nearly as much help. So this is great. Jim, did you have a question? No. Okay. All right.
Okay,
we'll
we'll
move
we'll
on.
let you keep moving with your agenda.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabby.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to discussion item 5.2. This is the childcare proposal at the Old Town Shop. And let's see, are you going to introduce this, Britt?
Sure. You guys haven't heard my voice in a while, so.
Well, at
It's
least you
not-
have a
it's not-
voice.
It's not fully there yet. So just kind of go over a summary of this. We're gonna have Stephen, the Executive Director of Teens, will be presenting after this. He's gonna be presenting his request to lease the Old Town shop lot from the town of Netherlands so it can be developed for a childcare center. He has met with some Board of Trustees members in a one-on-one about this, and below are some of the items that were originally discussed. Consideration of vacating Fifth Street regardless of future development to increase the parcel size. By vacating it, it increases it from 0.46 acres to 0.74 acres. Implementing a land swap where town would acquire 391st West First Street, which is where the new Explorers currently operate, in exchange for the Old Town shop, leasing that land, and creating a mixed-use building with a childcare center on the bottom and housing at the top of the Old Town shop lot. It was made known at the October Board of Trustees meeting, the 3rd, that they would need to address some of the zoning considerations on this proposal. Originally, private elementary and secondary schools, state licensed group homes for the developed disabled childcare centers were only allowed through SRU in residential zones, neighborhood commercial and general commercial. Therefore, in order to allow that, we had to go through that meeting to allow it to be SRU, available by SRU. It was made known that we would either need to change the rezone to rezone the land, or to make that change to the use group table. After going through the PC and the Board of Trustees, there was the change to the use group table to allow this by SRU. Let's see here. Town staff had, we asked town staff to assess this ask from Stephen, and just going to go over kind of some quick bullet points from town staff. If town staff, one of the questions was, if town staff goes the land swap route, is the value of New Explorers property equal to or more than the Old Town shop? Something that was noted is there are potential risk with the long-term lease. This lease agreement will be complicated to work through, some questions to consider. What happens if the structure doesn't get built? The timeline of the construction will be important to consider. Any agreements with Teens Inc. would need to factor in risk of incomplete construction. What happens if Teens Inc. does not have the funds to run the facility? Is town now responsible for running this facility? If Teens Inc. does not have the capital to fully construct the building, what will protect the town from liens being placed on the property, what happens if the building is abandoned, what other parcels has Teens Inc. looked at, and why is the town shop the most viable? What is the financial structure, loans, grants, timeline, and how does Teens Inc. Plan to address parking? Street's main concerns was vacating the right-of-way of Fifth Street from a plowing perspective and losing any right-of-way access. This is an area where we currently plow. If Fifth Street is vacated, is there another space that we would be able to put this, like a pilot or an alley cutway through? Parks, their concerns, many of the neighbors has identified this could be a spot for a park. It is recognized that a park would increase the property value for the neighborhood and is aesthetically pleasing. That being said, Parks Department does not have the capacity to build a park at this time. Utilities, main concerns was, does Teens Inc. plan to pay PIF and TAP fees to connect to the system, or will they be looking for the town to waive these fees? When the requests are made to waive fees, town staff do make it a point to explain to the bot that that does pass the fees for future infrastructure onto other ratepayers. So we would encourage Teens Inc. to consider alternative funding to be able to pay for those fees. No concerns with vacating Fifth Street. Fire department, they would like a hydrant installed in the area and would need to loop with our water main. The cost of this development and infrastructure would need to be further discussed with the Board of Trustees. Engineering, no immediate concerns. Planning and zoning, there is a resolution committing this land to housing with the Prop 123 commitment to the permit 7, which I believe is now 13. Or is it 7? Yep, 13 new affordable housing units for the next 3 years. So just want to explain, some explanations of why the Child Care Center is more valuable to the community versus the development of housing. Sustainability, really no concerns, as it does incorporate a lot of sustainable practices. Town staff do understand this request and would be comfortable working alongside Teens Inc. to make it happen if approved by the Board of Trustees. However, town staff do want to note from an equity standpoint, the Board of Trustees may want to consider the request process to allow for public or private entities to submit proposals for the Board of Trustees to consider this lot versus going with this one proposal. So looking at other options. Sorry. Let's see. Just gonna kind of move on to the questions because there's a lot of information obviously with the same. Just wanting to know, does the PC have any questions for Teens Inc. after Stephen makes this presentation? And obviously you guys had tons of materials to go along with this. Miranda, I don't know if you want to add anything. But I will, throw it over to Stephen.
So before Stephen, you can come up, before he starts. So do I understand correctly that all of these issues that have been brought up or concerns by the town, will they be addressed in the SRU prior to before we see it, correct? Or are you looking for input on these from us this evening?
So we as staff met with Stephen, and Stephen actually has a memo that addresses all of town's concerns.
Okay.
And so we noted that in the aim. We just wanted to kind of recap it. But Stephen actually has already met with staff on multiple occasions and has kind of committed to addressing all of our concerns. As staff, we feel comfortable with the proposal that is currently will come before the town. And so, yes, there will be more information, of course, in the aim when this comes as an SRU, really kind of the back and forth between town and how Teens has committed or their responses to us. We just wanted you to be aware that, we have already voiced kind of our feelings and concerns, but Stephen's been incredible about addressing anything that's come up for us. And when we do feel comfortable supporting as this moves forward.
Okay, great. Thank you. Go ahead, Steve.
Cool. I thought I'd just take a quick moment to tell you why. Am I on? Mike? Okay, cool. And hope you have questions for me. We have met, and I think a lot of those initial points that were brought up, we've talked with staff and worked through, I think, most everything. But we're here, I just, to tell you why we're here and why it's so important for us is we know individuals who participate in early childhood education programs are 30% more likely to graduate from high school, 50% more likely to hold a job with a livable wage. Further research says that every dollar invested to build stronger early childhood education system returns on that investment to society $7. Our goal, and then locally, that's kind of the big picture, but locally, our current preschool is licensed for 20, has a capacity of 20. We have 60 people on a wait list. Eagles Nest just closed down, as you probably know, in Gilpin County. So from Idaho Springs to Estes Park, there's no childcare for anyone under 2.5 years old. And there's 20 spots year round for children 2.5 to 5 years old. Our goal is to build this facility to serve infants to age 7, do this as soon as possible, and serve as many lower income families as possible. Want to just mention a little bit about Teens Inc. We're a nonprofit organization, which means that any profits that do come into Teens Inc. Go back into our mission as opposed to shareholders or to profit individuals. We're a nonprofit business. We have to be sustainable. Otherwise, we know what could happen just by looking at Eagles Nest and lots of other preschools and nonprofit organizations. And we have a history of doing that. We're run by a volunteer board of directors, but we have a history of putting our constituency above cost-saving measures while maintaining a sustainable operation. And specifically with the preschool, I have some specific examples. We have unlimited childcare assistance program spots. That's not super common for private or nonprofit childcare centers because you don't receive the same amount from the assistance program, the state, as you do if you private pay. But we have unlimited amount. We also have a sliding scale for families who make under 300% federal poverty level. And right now that's over $104,000. So we have that sliding scale to fill the gap between CCAP and federal poverty level. Yes.
Hey, Stephen, this is Commissioner Reese, Jim Reese. I just wanted to ask so I can understand that. When you say unlimited amount, are you talking about for as many spots you have for children?
Yeah. So 20, we have 20 slots. And if we had 20 people on CCAP in the school, that would be great.
Okay. Thank you.
During COVID, the 13 months we stayed open despite losing $5,000 a month in operating costs. Our board of directors made that commitment and we made that commitment to the community and stayed open. Furthermore, we granted over $15,000 of tuition assistance during that time when we were quarantined, we reimbursed everyone who had paid. That was pretty unheard of from everything that I've learned from childcare centers. And lastly, during COVID, the first 6 months, we give out $15,000 in direct financial assistance. And I point these out because, yeah, we're a nonprofit. We need to be sustainable. We have to keep our operations running. Yet our bottom line is impact. It's not profit. And we have a history of doing that. So why the town shop site? One is our values align. We believe our values align really well with the town. We're both in it for public good. We're both in it to provide a service to the community. The urgency has only increased since we first came to the BOT in early October. Since that time, 33 slots of childcare have closed in Gilpin County. So the urgency has just increased. The focus on early childhood ed is still high within the state and within the federal government. So that may not last forever, but right now, coming out of COVID, it's still high. And we hope to, really get going before that time is done. Lastly, I mean, it's the most viable option. We've talked with landowners, we've heard and explored other sites, but this is the most viable option. There's been no real concrete other option that's come about, despite our conversations we've had with folks. It's ready. It's ready to go, and we're ready. Teens Inc.'s ready to leverage kind of all of our connections, all of our relationships and our history to make it happen. So that's all I wanted to say. I'd love to answer the questions that come up. I think we sent you kind of more, you know, I don't want to say overly detailed, but kind of concepts of what we're considering on the site. Those concepts, you know, we feel will do a really good job of making a dent in the need that's there. Will it forever? I don't know. It's hard to tell. But for the moment now, we think it will make a big dent. We think it fits within what we've heard in that neighborhood. It will be, and the priority is that it'll create a great learning environment for the kids who are attending.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So Chair Williams again. So quick question, could you just give us maybe some examples of some of the other sites you looked at and perhaps why they didn't work, or was it size, was it location? Just to get because you said you've talked to and looked at a number of sites, I'd like to kind of get a feel of kind of the homework that you did.
Sure. I've talked to two folks who have visions of larger projects, of other projects within the town. And while there's been some generous conversation, everything's pending what is to come. And there's a lot of uncertainty. And I know that me personally feel that some of these projects could be really beneficial to the town. But I know Teens Inc. does not want to be involved in promoting, getting involved in projects that we're having a stake in potentially. And the timing does not align with the urgency that we have. Some of those sites would be more costly with clearing of space. They're not ready to go. Other sites have, while I did not engage with like an architect on those sites, there could be challenges with space, as you see, like what was submitted to you today. It's flat, single story is where the main operations run. Second story for kids, lots of it aren't allowed. You can't have infants and toddlers on a second story. I'm not sure if you can have preschoolers, but you certainly can't have infant and toddlers on second story with fire potential. I've talked to two other private landowners where just to explore, but nothing viable has come out. And for us to raise funds, we need a 99-year lease, or we need land donated, or we need to purchase. If we purchase, it's going to extend the time and the cost exponentially. But funders will not donate if we don't have a 99-year lease minimum. Years does not cut it for funders. So those are some of the hurdles with the folks that we've talked to. I'd rather not get like super specific as to who, when, where, and all of that.
That's fine. Okay, let's first open it up to the commission. Any commissioners have any questions or comments?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Reese. I appreciate that you bringing this before us and looking for a creative solution for important need in our community. And thank you for stepping up and putting this work together. And I can see why it would be beneficial. Your timeline's pretty aggressive here. I see that you're looking to raise $4 million and potentially have this built and ready to occupy, it says in early 2025. Is that still accurate?
Not early 2025, maybe late 2025, early 2026. If that says that, that's my mistake.
Well, it says as early
Oh.
as 2025.
Right,
It
so
said
late.
4 years somewhere in here.
It says 4 years is what we'd be looking
Right.
for in the lease, but basically we have, there's talk of the swap and there's more of it's not exactly a swap. I think the potential is because our current preschool site is worth more than the vacant site. So there's talk of possibly the town with funds paying the difference between the assessed values. So that's an asset that we have that we can leverage right away. We're in negotiations and have talked with folks about a 0 interest loan to get us going, to get the ball moving so we can really make good progress on fundraising early. Some of the grants you apply for, you need a certain amount before you can apply. Most of our timelines will be for funding will be late 2024 with award notice in late 2024. So realistically, if we really were aggressive and the timeline worked, like getting through this whole process and moving forward, and we felt it was beneficial to do a little site work in 2024 to keep moving, we may be able to. I think more realistically, site work would be early 2025 because we'll have our funding notifications. And we've talked to 8 to 10 different funders so far and had very good conversations.
Well, that's part of what I was wondering about is how confident you are in raising this large amount of money in 18 months, let's say. Or how much do you have to have raised before you can break ground? Do you have to have 100% of it all committed? And how does that work?
I don't think so, because I think our board is willing to leverage some of the resources we have. And some of in the asset of the current building, even though I know we won't be having that the whole time if we do work with the town to swap. But we've talked to folks who know this is a priority, including Worthy Cause funds from Boulder County, Department of Local Affairs funds. We've talked to the Gates Family Foundation, the Temple Hoyne Buell Foundation, which is 300 to 400. The Worthy Cause Fund is no limit. But you can also do Worthy Cause funds over multiple years. And they actually will fund debt reduction as well, which is very rare for funders. And that's Boulder County Worthy Cause. You all support it through property tax and stuff. So we've talked to Commissioner Levy about that potential. We have a long history with Boulder County supporting operationally and also through Worthy Cause funds. Down at Teens Inc. We did a lot of energy efficiency work on our building down there and have been awarded, and our second story was awarded through Worthy Cause funds. So we're very familiar. And we have a development team that it's not just me who works. We're working with, we've been selected as a partner of promise with EPIC, which is Executives Partnering and Investing in Childcare. And we've worked with them already not only do they provide some funding, they also help connect you to other funders, and they provide technical assistance on the building, helping through these processes. So that's been a great resource already and will continue to be.
Oh, okay. It sounds certainly like you know how to raise funds and that you have a lot of places to go for that. I guess my concern would be more like what happens if you end up with only $2 million and it's the end of 2025? What is there a point where you're not going to be able to build this building the way you're proposing it because funding is an issue, I guess. What happens if we don't have the kind of matching and funding and sources that we hope, and you only end up with $2.5 million and you have a $4 million build? Or the other way, construction costs increase and it actually costs $5.5 million to build this building by the time you're ready to build it.
Sure. Okay, so I'm confident, I think we're confident that we will be able to do that. Now, if in worst case scenario, something like that happened, we'd have to pivot. And I don't know if that means, I wouldn't want to lessen the quality of what we're trying to do. Maybe it means there's a loan. Maybe we explore more loan potential from the USDA or other very low interest loans to keep moving. The history we have is that we've been able to, acquire new explorers with and pay that off from Aspen Grove. We've taken on some capital improvements to our building down there. We've been able to maintain everything that we've had and making sure that it's in good shape. So yes, there's going to be a little bit of faith that we're going to have to be able to do that. We have a strong donor base. We've talked to folks already about like zero interest loans to get us going. We've talked to DOLA and Boulder County who have potential of $1 million grants. Temple Hoyne Buell is 300 to 400,000. They're supporters of us right now at the preschool. They provide operating funds for us right now. The Gates Family Foundation is like 75,000, which is a smaller. But then there's, Daniel's Fund, Denver Foundation. We have long histories with funders that, we've been working with over the years.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I just would say that probably when you get to the SRU process, there's going to be more questions about what happens if you break ground and you're $1.5 million short. I can just anticipate there's going to be some more questions about that. But I think there's a very worthy project. You certainly have a history of doing great things in our town and accessing donations. And so start lining that stuff up.
Yep. Or what happens to the building should things not work out or whatever. I know that's
in our current lease, if for whatever reason, like Teens Inc. opted to start programming with, we were like, we're going to make it a shelter for animals. Like that wouldn't fly with our current lease, and the building and the asset would be turned over to the town for the use of public good. So that we're totally fine with that being in the lease. And then the town has an asset that they don't have to run childcare out of it. And at least it doesn't matter to us. We are looking for the same model that we have with Teens Inc. because we're committed to make it happen. And that's what we know the town needs now and into the future. And that's what Teens Inc. is committed to.
Oh, okay. And on another subject, I wondered if you had productive, I saw in here that said you'd talked to 2 of the neighbors, but didn't really say you came to a resolution with them, or at least maybe I didn't read it correctly. Were you able to get some buy-in by the neighbors?
I've talked to a lot of neighbors.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, and I've reached out to neighbors and was told that they're not interested in talking about it. So, but I've talked to, just the last 2 days, I've talked to 2 neighbors who, just to go over the plans, and both were excited about it. The 2 that I talked to who are supportive throughout.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to seeing the full presentation in January.
And I met at, initially I met with more neighbors, went to one of the neighbors had a little barbecue or gathering that I went to meet the other neighbors. So we've communicated, they have our contact. A few months ago or a month ago, I reached out and kind of said, I think we're like able to mitigate quite a bit of the concerns that I've heard. And that's the last conversation with the neighbors generally.
Okay, any other, I see someone has a hand raised. Stephanie?
Yeah, I just have a question. I know in the packet we were given it just got emailed out earlier today, the potential layout and sort of the map of it. Were we going to go over that, or I have it up in front of me? I wasn't sure if we were going to talk to it in detail or not.
If I think, yeah, absolutely. And please, these are very like just a concept start. But generally the size, yeah, you want me to just kind of, so that's about 25 feet from, I believe that's the property line on the top to the neighbor on the north side of the creek. That's about 25 feet from there to the building. We're proposing we put in a trail there. It sounds like the town has interest in maintaining that trail. And then that's where the building starts. The yellow is the old town shop site. On the east side is where cars will come in, and there's a little drop-off zone, kind of like a kiss and go or hug and go there for the kids. The parking requirements, from what I've learned, are met there with the 4 spots for the staff on the west side. And then I think there's 8 spots there. There's a fire hydrant in there. All the fire utility hookups and stuff are on the east side. Then there's the playground with garden beds, greenhouse, trash kind of receptacle or storage with a kind of a dumpster area. Trees planted. Those those white circles are all trees. At the maximum height is 26 feet to the roof. And yeah, so you can scroll down if you wish. That's the interior site. So we have 2 preschool classrooms, a toddler room, no, 2 toddler rooms, an infant room, a kitchen, ingress egress points on kind of, you can see them on both ends with doors in the back. And then the gray area is like the playground, the white area is like the garden area. Then you can keep scrolling to the second story. So this is on the west side is the 2-story, about 26 feet total height, offices, therapeutic rooms. So that's kind of the only program. Well, that middle spot, the little grayish brown, is like an outdoor playground picnic area up there. Those checkered things on the right are solar panels. And then you can keep going to kind of like, yeah, this type of stuff. Proposing a 6-foot fence. It can be 4 feet, I believe, by licensing requirements, but 6 feet just to help keep critters, animals out, and moose and stuff out of there. More so, possibly, hopefully. Then you can keep going, just different views. Those are the solar panels. So that bottom one is looking north. So like if you were standing at in the trailers right now, that little dome is the greenhouse. You can keep going. So yeah. That's kind of the photo, or you can see the shrubs or trees on that side. Different roof lines, hopefully to make it, you know, feel better in there and look better.
What's the dome again? There in the middle?
Greenhouse.
Oh, greenhouse, sorry.
Yeah, you can see it right there. And then so the exterior will be like that fire rated composite wood. I think that's, and then you can so entry point would be kind of this area over here.
So go back.
Sorry.
Bear with me.
So people drive in right here, enter in here. That's the only entry point for like,
The students, people online will be able to.
I know, but that would be on the east side, underneath the solar.
That's on,
Underneath the solar panels is where people will enter, except for a few staff who will come in on the west side.
so like 90% of traffic in and out would be on Griffith Street.
Correct.
So like Fourth and Colson, like south and behind are,
Not used at all. At most 4 cars for those 4 parking spots on the west side. You can see like the outdoor area up there. So that's looking, well, there's the gardens, the greenhouse. Yeah, that's looking at the entryway. That's the entry point right there for families. And that's the backside. So theoretically, that's where the trail would be, looking at that side.
remind me too what like the predicted in and out like traffic volume would be like on a
So
regular day.
if we're fully full with 60 kids, you can, from history and
60
from
is
what
the
I
max.
know, well, if you really want to get into details, it's going to be probably 10 to 15% are going to be absent every day.
Sure.
And then there will be multiple kids from one family.
Yeah.
So
So in theory, maybe 30, 40 cars.
in the morning,
In the morning and then
eight-
in the afternoon.
between 8:30 and 9, and then pick up. Right now, we stagger some pickup, like you can pick up at 3 or at 3:30. So if we do the same schedule, a few cars may come in at 3:30 and pick some kids up, and then a few more at 5.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep. So it'd be between probably 8:30 and 9. The school day really starts at 9, drop-offs at 8:30. So during that time, there'd be some flow of cars coming in, and then between, maybe a few at 3:30 if we do the same schedule, and then the final at 5.
Okay, any other questions at this point?
Yeah, I have a question, Stephen. So Teens Inc. is nonprofit
Mhm.
and the preschool or the daycare would be for-profit. Is that correct? Or it would be
No.
under the purview
It
of?
would be part of Teens
Of
Inc. as the
Teens Inc.
nonprofit, just like our current preschool is.
It would all be operated the same,
Same.
so Teens Inc. would oversee all the
Yeah.
financials on
Yep.
that.
We'd oversee the financials, we'd have a development, that's why it works, I think, for preschools when there's more capacity within the staff than a standalone preschool, that it's harder to have a development person. It's harder to have a financial, like we have a assistant director who does all of our finances. We have an auditor, we have a development, 2 people on our development team plus myself, so 3, who works to raise money to make sure that the programs can
So the-
sustain themselves.
The profits made from the daycare would go back into specifically the daycare, not Teens Inc. Would they be separate?
If we had a profit coming in, it would go back to Teens Inc. and be,
And then
yeah, I mean, it's all one budget operating for our we have Chinook West, we have outdoor
Right.
leadership programs, we have teen center, we have preschool, and our whole operating budget.
So it's considered a private school though? I mean,
Yeah, the reason it's a private school because we don't get public funding for the school, but we can apply for funding from foundations. We get funded from Boulder County. We get a bit of funding from Gilpin County. And it's all part of the big picture of Teens Inc.
Which Chinook is involved in.
Which Chinook's involved
So
in, the
nobody-
teen center's involved in. Yep,
Okay,
yep,
thank you.
yep.
So depending upon funding, the cost would vary for the students that come there, correct?
Yeah, so depending on, there's lots of different, so infants are there'll be a higher cost for the infant care. Our ratios have to be 1 to 5 by licensing, but really it's 1 to 3. Like one person can't watch 5 infants. So we'll be at 1 to 3. And then there'll be different price points for different, depending on where, like if preschool is less expensive than toddlers. But again, we want to connect with childcare folks who need childcare assistance. We also want to connect with folks who are going to take advantage of the sliding scale. And having the ability to serve the amount that we're hoping to be able to will allow us to like really reach out and try to connect with families who need it. Like we can't do that in our current, operations with 20 spots. But we'd like to have staff here at the Human Resources Fair to promote the childcare, and get folks who really need it in the door. And that's our history too. I mean, all of our programs there's no one ever most of them are free. The only one that's not right now is the preschool and also our outdoor leadership programs. But that's just, we do programs that for Outward Bound would cost $1,400 and we charge $500 if you can pay. And 17% of the people who participate in those pay nothing at all. Mm-hmm. We never turn anyone away, and that's kind of our history, and that's what we want to be able to do.
Okay. Any other questions before we open it to the public? Mike?
Yeah, hi Steve, this is Mike Dye. So I think it's a very interesting project. It's very loud all of a sudden. Yeah, I guess that'd help. So I was wondering what your thoughts are at this point, and I know it's very early on, as though what the biggest risks are to the project. And I know you've already talked about funding a little bit. I was curious to hear your thoughts.
The biggest risks, that is a good question. The risks that other schools are having, let me go there, staffing is a challenge in early childhood ed. We at New Explorers have not had staffing issues. We've been staffed essentially full the whole time. We've never had to close the doors because of lack of staffing up here. We have a pool of substitutes. And we do provide incentive. We provide if you work at New Explorers right now and your child is that age, they go for free. So we have these things built that I think helps us recruit and retain talented staff who, I think New Explorers is probably the most qualified preschool in the country. We have 4 people who are director certified. It's incredible, and it has been that way. So that's a big issue. Of course, we'll be serving more folks. We'll need more teachers. The risk of I can't see a situation where we don't build the building. I really can't see that. I think our timeline is super ambitious with 2025, but I think it's very possible with the way funding lines up, assuming we're able to get through this process in a good timetable. I mean, we're one of 5 partners of promise with Epic. Like, we have support behind us. They just built a preschool in Steamboat, or we're partnering with us so we have the expertise and kind of the folks who've done this a bunch behind us. We have history with funders. So I think, the risk too is down the road, 10 years from now, there's more of a need.
Yeah.
Which is hard, it would be great for the town, I think, because things are thriving, I think, if that place is full. But that would be a bummer in ways for the community too.
Yeah.
But
totally.
way less than a bummer than it is now, I think. So.
But like that you say that and appreciate that you like that would mean that Teens Inc. is successful, but still not meeting the needs.
Yeah, the need is outgrown. I mean,
Yeah.
the census of kids under 5 in the last census is increasing.
Yep.
In the 80466 area code.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, maybe it's just cost of living up here is maybe less than down in Boulder, whatever, or
But
who
a little
knows?
bit,
But
yeah.
that's what's happened.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We can give it some more thought.
Yeah.
I know this won't be the last time we get to talk to you.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious to hear if you do think of further risks down the road. I'd love to hear them. So I was going to ask this, I guess I will ask it, but your plan is pretty much contingent on vacating Fifth Street with the drawings that you've showed us. And I guess is there a possibility of not vacating Fifth Street, or just that wouldn't particularly work well for the plan?
I think that's to us with the trail there. Heard lots of concerns about the creek. So we'd be kind of creating a buffer and doing some revegetation with native plants that would enhance the creek there. I think there's potential for it to move further south without hindering it too much. We'd lose like a parking spot or 2 on that for the staff.
Okay.
It would get, I think, a little tighter if it was all on the Old Town Shop site.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. And could you help me understand there are a couple of scenarios about the acquisition of the land. The one is the 99-year lease agreement, and I understand that for $1 a year.
Yep.
Then there's a potential land swap or partial land purchase trading with are there other possibilities?
There's the potential of the swap and ownership, like transferring ownership.
Right.
That's one that I've heard that I know that our committee brought up as like, it's not really a swap if it's a lease.
Yeah.
And I think we're just starting to really dive into what that would look like.
Okay.
If there's, when at first, I think we were kind of, we weren't, that was hard for us at first because that's an asset that's going to help us move the goal quicker to where we want to be.
Yeah.
We also want it to work and people to feel good about it.
Yeah.
So
Great.
we're certainly open to it. Then there was questions of like, well, if we do the swap and the town pays the difference, then like, when are those funds available? That is a question to help us move forward too.
Yeah.
So those are just some thoughts that have come up.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And also thank you for the extremely detailed information that you sent to the packet. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions at this point? So, this is Chair Williams. The, two of the issues I've heard from the public, one was safety issues. So you mentioned you would have a fence and everything, but some people seem to be concerned about the location of the trailer park being so close, you know, to the teen center. And the second is environmental concerns of the lot. I don't know if you want to address any of those at this point.
Sure.
That might be helpful.
Safety wise, we have no concerns.
Okay.
The kids are going to be watched at all moments. There's going to be a 6-foot fence. There's going to be entry, you know, keyed entry, or, you know, with a remote access, badge. Yes. Thank you. There's no concerns from our point relating to safety. In fact, we think it will enhance the potential, you know, bring more safety to the area if that is a concern. Environmentally, I'm, you know, trusting that the engineers and the folks who have done the studies on the property are well and know what they're doing. And we also sent it to the state. There's actually a division within Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment where they want you to get it all checked out before you start building a preschool. And they responded that they have no issue or concerns at all with the site. So based on what the experts are saying, we have no concern with the site. They did say if you bring in fill dirt, then they want to test that fill dirt should be tested, which makes sense. And we'd follow that. I mean, so no concerns for either of those.
All right. Barring no more questions at this point, let's open it up for any public comment. So do we have anyone in the public here that wishes to speak or online? Sure they'll have opportunity in the future. So yeah, please come up to the mic and your name and address, and you have up to 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
It's over because I could go on
Okay.
that.
Well, we'll time you. Don't you worry.
All right, okay, good. My name is Helene Mann. My address is 237 Big Springs Point. You could see me right off the reservoir there. I've been a resident my husband has been a resident of Nederland for 15, 16 years. And then I retired as a school administrator in special ed from Chicago. We moved here. We retired to Nederland. And you ask why a 70-year-old woman would be so interested in a preschool daycare, because I believe in kids. Kids are our future. And, you know, talking to a lot of people in Nederland and seeing it myself, we're losing families because there is no daycare or preschool. If you look at your high school, I'm very, very small. And because a lot of families are sending their kids down the hill to school. And the same thing, it's going to hit the elementary. And that's a shame because I think that we could attract more teachers and more people and keep families here because it is less costly than Boulder. And I think this is a wonderful community and we have a lot to offer. I am on the board of Teens Inc. And the only reason why I am is because I believe in it totally. And I try to contribute as much as I can to the town when I can. But I think I like to address like risk or the money for building real quick. I'm on that committee for the daycare. And you can't foresee that, but I'm a salesperson by heart. And I believe in negotiating. And this is a nonprofit for builders, for our architect, for whomever. And I've never met a man like Stephen who could fundraise the way he does. I'm totally impressed. And I believe we can do this for the daycare center, preschool. It's definitely a need. Well, it's in my blood anyways. And I believe in that. I couldn't come to the other meetings because I was babysitting my grandchildren. So you can see that. So that's why I wanted to come here tonight. And we have a wonderful committee, and they're working very hard and very detailed oriented. And that is a wonderful site. And I'd just like to touch on the trailer park. Yeah, there would be concerns, but I think by putting that daycare center there and beautifying it, I think that could change that area. I truly believe that. And it could clean some of that up a little bit.
Okay,
All right.
thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak? Okay,
One more thing on the fundraising. Not many folks, some folks won't know, but there's incentives to give to early childhood. There's the Colorado Child Care Tax Credit, where donors can donate and get up to $100,000 of relief on their tax bill by 50% of their donation. If they have a liability, can come right back to them. So things are built in Colorado. These are some of the things that I've talking about with like, now's the time. There's things and processes and incentives built for people to give to early childhood education. That is definitely beneficial and helps with, raising funds that are necessary. So it's a straight up tax credit of 50% of your donation, which really, aids in raising money for early childhood. So we're familiar with all of those, and we talk to folks about them, and it's a win-win for the donor, for the community, for the organization, and to make things happen. So again, we're confident that we'll meet the goals that we need to meet.
can you do a matching donation on like Colorado Gives Day?
Yeah, you can.
Okay,
It's not really match, though.
what's that?
Small percentage of what you.
Yeah. Well, okay. Okay, anyone else in the public wish to speak? Otherwise, I'll close the public comment portion, bring it back to the commission. This is a discussion item, so, we may have further questions for you. Go back and forth, but mainly time for the commission to discuss. Okay, anyone have any further comment? Public comment is closed. Okay.
So I don't need you to respond to this, but I'll just tell you, as representative of the Presbyterian Church, came to about a dozen meetings over the course of 2.5 years to advocate for Tungsten Village, which has been an amazing addition to our community. All the people that came out and talked about the traffic and bringing the welfare people up from Nederland or from down below, and all the different things have not come to pass. So, and this community, there's a lot of people that will come out and naysay against things. So my recommendation is to take a lesson from Ron, and maybe you may not see it next month when you come before us. People don't follow the planning commission near as much as they do the BOT, but I promise you at some point before this gets through the BOT, you're going to face a crowd of people that are against this. So if you want to possibly head some of that off, I would suggest maybe doing a public outreach thing and just say, hey, let's have a meeting. I'm going to let everybody know. I'm going to put it online. Come on, come ask me your questions. Give me your best shot, and let me hear it. And let me try and alleviate your concerns. And maybe you can get 2/3 of those people's fears answered before we ever get to the BOT and actually trying to get this passed through them. That's my only recommendation, is just to try and get as much buy-in from the public as possible before you have the people that want to come out and, people hate change. They just do. But I think this is a very worthy project, and I'm glad you're taking this on because it seems like it's going to be very involved. And I loved what the part you said about scaling up to 60 kids then allows us to have more staff to allow us to address more concerns, help them with incomes, help them, look at these different things that you don't have the current staff to be able to do that. And I recognize all that stuff. Our small church, is very limited by the small number of people and what we can do. So having more people and more resources could just be a good thing for our community. But I can tell you some of the letters I saw was, and you don't have to address it here, but I'm sure you will hear come up, why are we building a daycare center for the Eldora employees? What was one of the letters I read. So if you want to address that would be great, but certainly, and I've heard that come back to me a couple of times.
Yeah, I'll address that by saying that we're certainly not doing that. We have no interest in being open on the weekends. And we want to serve the community here. We're going to be licensed and we want to know the families. We're going to get to know the kids. It's not for the benefit of people who are just coming up here to ski and drop their kids off. So that I can be assured of that.
Okay. Any other comments or recommendations to Steve before he comes back to us? Things that, it was very complete, like Mike said, we really appreciate that. But is there anything that you see that may be missing or something that you want to recommend to Steve that he puts in before we see it again?
Like Jim was saying, I'm sure that there will be people that come and don't want this to happen. One of the things that I have seen, not my personal opinion, by the way, just to be clear, but that it's inappropriate to be building a private business on public land. To address that directly would probably go a long way. As well as addressing what the impacts on the existing neighborhood are. I live in town myself and have been dealing with a development project that has had a high impact on my quality of life. And to acknowledge that out front and to be straightforward and honest, which I know you are about it, would really go a long way. I imagine, it won't make the problems go away for the people that see it that way, but to be straightforward about it is amazing. Thanks.
Okay, anything else at this point? If not, thank you very much for coming before us. I'm a very strong proponent of discussion items because we can have a more informal discussion, give you feedback, and give you more practice to present when you come back again. And you're looking at January, is that correct? To submit your SRU? Town staff, do you have anything to add to any of this or questions or?
Nope, I think so. Stephen knows that his deadline to get onto your January agenda is next Wednesday.
Aha.
Right.
Okay, you ready for
And
that?
then just a reminder, once the application is submitted, Britt will send out the ex parte quasi judicial
Right.
email because y'all got to see.
Good. Yeah, I was going to remind everybody of that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if no other further questions, again, thank you. And, you have.
Yeah,
that.
Commissioner Duggan here. Yeah, Stephen, I'm fully in support of this and I absolutely recognize the need and the urgent need. And the detailed plans laid out, it's great. My only question, and I think this is a question for all of us on the commission, is just the fact that we have this resolution that earmarked this lot for affordable housing. So are we just gonna not worry about that? That's kind of my question. So I think what we need to do is balance this urgent need of childcare with the urgent need of affordable housing and see what this site can sort of attack better. Question for staff. If the lot was zoned medium density, which is what the surrounding zoning is, then we could only put like 2 units of affordable housing on it. If it was zoned neighborhood commercial, we could put 4 or 5, obviously it'd be a PUD, so we could kind of do whatever we want, but did we have any sort of idea of even remotely what the vision of the number of units would be?
So
Well-
that, yeah, this board hasn't discussed it for housing, and obviously under public, there's no setbacks. And so
Right.
the board has no interest in rezoning this, whether they go the childcare route or housing route or a different route. They want to keep it a publicly zoned lot at all times. So that likely won't change. But there has been no discussion under this current board about housing. And just really quick on the resolution, you know, of course, it's not legally binding. Resolutions are really an expressed desire, an expressed interest of a board.
I get
And
that.
so, yes, the board is going to have to weigh that out,
Yeah.
but no, the board has not evaluated housing whatsoever on this lot.
Yep.
This current board
Yep.
has not.
Yeah, as Commissioner Reese has reminded us, there has been discussion in the past. I've forgotten the details of it, but when we were looking for, I don't know if it was under the original or the last comprehensive plan, but we were looking for areas for affordable housing. This lot came up as a suggestion for that. And that's when sort of this whole environmental issue first got discussed, was because, is this suitable for anything at this point? So that started that whole discussion. But again, like Miranda said, I don't think any of that really was binding, but it's a good point, Timmy, that you brought up, because we're always looking for areas for affordable housing.
Right. Well,
You-
and it also sets a precedent. It's like, what's a precedent? What's the point of doing a resolution like this if 4 years later we just do something else anyways, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of my biggest worry. So, but again, like I'm in full support of this. I just think we have some sort of, I don't know, background work to do on how we work around that. But yeah, I get it's not legally binding, and I think if we can all just agree and the community can agree that this is a better use for this lot than putting 2 or 4 or 8 units of housing, then great. But I think we just want to be sure about that.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right.
Well,
Thank you.
and I'll just couch along, this is Commissioner Reese again, is the difference is you're coming with a proposal that could be actionable in the next 2 to 3 years. I mean, this could be open for business by, 2026 for sure, we're hoping, as opposed to an unknown amount of time for down the future, if ever we would get we still haven't been able to fund the egress route out of, the Big Springs neighborhood, now going on almost 10 years after the fire, 8 years. So, I was going to bring up some of the history, I've talked with Roger about it, about the intended use of this, but I thank you very much, staff, for doing your diligence and digging into that and finding out the information. I thought maybe there was something that showed that an IGA that showed this was bound for affordable housing, but again, a resolution is not legally binding, and a bird in the hand is a lot more valuable than something that we might get in 5 to 10 to 20 years. So
Never get.
or never. That's right.
Yep.
And this is a need right now, just as big a need as housing is. So thank you for taking this on.
Okay. I guess we're done with 5.2. I would suggest we take a 5-minute break before our next large item that's coming up, and before Ron starts. Okay. So let's, about quarter of, let's reconvene. Yep, can you hear?
Turn it on.
Okay.
Let's hear you.
Yeah,
Is it turned on?
yeah.
Let's test. Go ahead. Test, test.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I need. Hear yourself? Yes, I can.
You look so at home sitting there. Hope that works out. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Be back on? Okay. All right, so let's move on to discussion item 5.3. This is the Netherlands Central Business District redevelopment preliminary PUD application. We expect to see when?
Well,
Next
probably within 2 to 3 months,
2 to 3 months.
Yes.
Okay. All
Um,
right.
working on additional things that a complete PUD would need.
Okay. All right. Do we first want to have this introduced, Britt or Miranda? Then we'll let Ron speak.
Sure. So tonight before you is a relatively informal discussion about the Netherlands Central Business District redevelopment plans. So Ron has had these plans in the works for a variety of different times, but at least 8+ years, where his intention is to move forward with the redevelopment of a large portion of the central business district downtown in which he owns. There are 6 parcels that are a part of this plan unit development that he is proposing. The largest being on First Street, on the north side of First Street. There's also a parcel near the RTD lot. The one on the north side of First Street is a redevelopment plan plus kind of a service industry. 101st Street is another section which is just neighboring the Agati building that was Alpine Botanicals. There is a parcel that is located off of Boulder Canyon Drive off of the highway, as well as one on Snyder near Tin Shed. So all of those parcels are in your packet and they are labeled, they are numbered, and some of them do contain names like the Amsterdam. And so in these proposals, a lot of them are typically mixed use. You are looking at housing, workforce housing, standard housing. You're also looking at business opportunities. Those are primarily the focus of this proposal. However, Ron has also kind of discussed utilizing some of these parcels for additional childcare. He is aware, of course, that there's a separate proposal, but there's been acknowledgement that there's never enough childcare. And so perhaps Teens Inc. can still propose theirs as well as working with Ron for his. Ron is also willing to discuss using a portion of 101st Street, giving an easement so that the town can move forward with a secondary bridge. That is in a location that the town has previously identified as appropriate because it would connect Conger to Snyder. So Ron is open to that conversation. So initially, Ron had submitted for a plan unit development. That was his intention to come forward with an official hearing, and he was prepared for that hearing. However, identified that there were some additional conversations he wanted to have and doing some considerations and updates, which is why he pulled the application altogether. An option was to move it to a date certain, but in order to give Ron the space to have the conversations he needed to continue to evaluate his proposal, he needed to remove that ex parte component, which is why he pulled the application. In talking to Chair Williams and Vice Chair Reese, there was kind of a request of give Ron the opportunity to come to you in a really informal way and just get your feedback. So tonight, Ron is really looking to hear from you more than anything. We talked in advance of this, and he just wants to hear what you might have to say. May not be able to answer every question. Just a reminder, a preliminary PUD does not require full specs on the buildings. It is concept in nature. And so if you're looking for very specific details, he's really not at that phase in the planning process. But I realize I'm speaking for Ron, but I know that he's happy to hear any thoughts or considerations you have, but I'll turn it over to Ron.
Okay, go ahead, Ron.
Ron, I don't think you're on.
Yep.
2 things I'd like to mention initially that I think there's misconceptions about. The first is that this is something that happened almost all at once, and that's not at all possible or practical or feasible.
It would be the 6 sites would be developed probably anywhere from 2 to 3 years apart, so that all kinds of problems are avoided, particularly the disruption to various other neighbors and things like that. And second thing is the magnitude of it. It's designed to function and each element to complement the other, so that there's a functionality that you wouldn't get if you just approved a single parcel at once, which would be probably change over time as words change and technology changes. So I'm open to questions, and I thank you for letting me come. I appreciate the opportunity to be here on an informal basis, and I would just prefer to see what your questions are. I passed out the brochure 2 or 3 meetings ago or a month ago. Yeah. And I presume everybody's had a chance to look at it. So I'll stop with that statement and entertain your questions.
And we also sent out your webpage too, so that
Yeah.
people could peruse that as well. So from this conceptual plan that you handed out a few months ago, are there any changes to it?
Well, there's a possibility. The reason I have a child care center in there was directly a request of Mayor Billy for me to leave it in. So that's vacillated from housing back to child care and could go back the other way. I'm not sure what the need is, but the mayor perceives that there could easily be a need for 2 facilities. So it's at his request that it's there. There's no major changes anticipated.
Okay. All right. Before we open it up to the commission, do you have any particular questions for us at this point, or you just want to wait and get some input?
I really am looking for your
Okay.
input.
All right. All right. Well, let's open it up for commission input at this point. Who would like to go first? You look like you're eager, Mike.
I guess I have risk on my mind. First of all, thanks for coming and presenting this in an informal basis. It really makes it
Make sure
easier
you're
to.
close enough
Oh.
on the mic. Yeah.
I was too loud. No, I'm too soft. All right. Thanks for coming and sharing this with us in an informal basis. It really helps to be able to look through it before we have to move into a more formal process. So just like I asked Stephen about his proposal, I was curious what your thoughts are and the biggest risks in your mind that are associated with this project or these projects.
Let me repeat, make sure I understood your question.
Yes, yes.
You're asking what the risks are?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh boy, there's lots of them.
I know.
There's a long list.
How about top 3? Just
I'm sorry?
how about the top 3?
The top 3, boy, that, the top 3 are national. The first thing is international conditions. Believe it or not, if we're
absolutely.
in 6 months from now in a nuclear war, everything's going to change dramatically.
That would throw a wrench into the plans.
Just watching the news in the last day, if the Red Sea is blocked up and there's no traffic through the canal, the cost of goods are going around the Cape are going to be tripled. That means, is that too high of a risk to take? Changing economic conditions, and this is one of them I think is probably the biggest risk. Well, it's hard to categorize them 1, 2, and 3 at this point. Miscalculation on my part could be a big risk. You can do all the studies in the world. I've seen this happen in major projects and be wrong.
Yeah.
So it's a risk that I have made a huge mistake. So I have to keep studying, keep looking and reassuring not only myself, but lenders and developers and contractors who are going to be part of a huge team that's going to try and pull this off. And then I think somehow a risk is getting the confidence of the people of Nederland that this would be a beneficial thing for Nederland. I truly believe it is and would be, but I really feel that it's a risk, that there are people that are so afraid of it for whatever reason that could influence decisions that would be adverse. And I want to be blatantly honest that I think that's a huge risk.
Ron, can I?
Nevertheless, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I don't mean to interrupt you. You continue. I just wanted to offer as you're having an informal conversation, I've spent a lot of time with Ron and his team, and so I want to offer some supports to Ron in conversations. One question that's come up is like, why all 6? Why are you going for the whole thing instead of piecemealing it? I think that there's twofold. First, they're all tied together. They all work together. They're all phased in together. But also, as Ron just noted, he's going to need to seek funders to assist with this, and they're going to want to fund the full development, not this piecemealed approach. And I think in many ways that's maybe misunderstood, that yes, there is the need for financial assistance here, and it has to be kind of a lucrative project for that to work. And so that's a bit of the why, but also more importantly, just because it's so tied together. Like when Ron thought about, well, let me just run Amsterdam, right? He's brought Amsterdam before. The second he brings Amsterdam, you can't talk about the rest of the project because of ex parte and
Right.
quasi judicial matters. They're all tied together. And so the feeling is, let's have the conversation. And while it feels big and very overwhelming for many because it's coming with all 6 pieces, I think the hope is that we're looking at it as this all ties together, but yet it's not like it's popping up in 5 years. You're going to see all 6 structures. I mean, it is how many years? I mean, it is a really long phased approach, but because it does have the tying pieces, that's why it comes together with all 6 components.
I really like it when somebody explains it better than I do.
So I don't mean to and just for clarification, as staff, we're not trying to advocate or anything, but we've spent a lot of hours with Ron and team and feel like we do understand what he's going for. And so we would just want to offer additional supports with responses tonight.
And I think that's a lot of the public's concern is this thing is so big, it's going to change the character of Nederland. And a lot of it is they just don't understand or see bigger picture, including the benefits, or why does this have to happen at once? I've heard so many times over and over again, well, why doesn't he just, build Amsterdam and see how it goes and, see if it works out before this whole huge projects get started. And then all of a sudden, all these problems and it's half built and, there's just all these concerns. And a lot of it is just, ignorance from not taking the time to go through and try to understand exactly what you're trying to do and why, like you mentioned, Miranda, why it happens in sequence.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
The sequence is important. It's interesting you said changing the character of the town. At the break, I Googled in the question just to see.
You knew it was coming.
Yes. And we have on First Street old buildings, and the complaints of the current tenants are they're too small, they're dysfunctional. these people are just eking out a living in these buildings because they're so dysfunctional. Every single tenant I have needs more space, needs a greater organization for parking, and just the services that I, as a landlord, need to provide. Dirt lots are terrible to try to clean snow off of.
Yep.
You always end up plowing up a lot of rock and gravel with the snow. And in the spring, you got to level it out again, and you've left a lot of potholes. I mean, just there's myriad risk levels in terms of, so they're all supportive of the redevelopment, and they're all offered the opportunity to come back, and they're all offered the opportunity. And this is where we talk about the whole thing working together. These people that are my tenants, I don't want to put out of business. And if they have to leave for 2 or 3 years to reestablish themselves and get their clientele back is extremely difficult. So if we build the Amsterdam and 2 or 3 tenants move into the Amsterdam and preserve their business and their own personal income, they're real happy about that. So this is what's planned, is to take care of these people. And ironically too, this is what lenders want. They want to be sure you have tenants.
Right.
So then we built the Rotterdam, which is the other bigger residential, and it has commercial in it. So I've talked with each tenant at length to try and see what they want to do. I can go right down the block and tell you if you want to hear it, but I really want to hear what your concerns are in terms of how this works, because Miranda said it really awkwardly. There's a lot of moving parts. There is a lot of risk. And I'm not the only one taking it. There's investors and lenders and contractors, and a huge team of people who are going to be dependent on the success. And Linda pointed out at one meeting, there's been real examples of colossal failures in our neighborhood. One was in Boulder, and Linda mentioned this, where a guy who built the original Crossroads Shopping Center tried to build a hotel where the Justice Complex is now, and he failed, and there was this giant skeleton of a foundation that sat on 6th and Canyon for almost 15 years. So one of the questions I get that how do you prevent things like this from happening? Well, you have a good enough plan that experts in economics feel it'll work. And lenders always have economists who look at things like this. There's such other things that are simple. Key man life insurance is something that you need if you lose a key person, that there's an infusion of cash into the project to replace them. And that could be anybody. I've signed loan agreements with banks that prohibit all of the key members of the company from taking a flight together, because they had an instance where a private plane crashed, president, vice president, everybody in the company died, and the project went broke.
Yep.
So there's some interesting things like that. But again, I'm looking for your questions, and I'll do my best to answer them, because Miranda answered it better than I did, so I may let her answer the rest of them.
Well, just following on to Mike's comment, I think one of the concerns is the risk, and you've explained a lot. This is good. Exactly, what would happen if it's half built, right? I mean, that's a fear that I think a lot of commissioners perhaps have. I know I do as well. I got full confidence in you, but it's still in the back of your head.
Sure.
I'm
not young.
You think about that. I know. Well, we started talking in 1996, I think, when I first joined the planning commission. So, yeah.
Well,
So-
there's performance bonds are
Yeah.
often required.
Yeah.
To where, and if you structure a team right, where you lose a key player, the rest of the team can carry it, just like a football game. You have a team that's a lot bigger than ever the people who are on the field at the time.
Right. And so that's encouraging. So, Anyway, Jim, did you have, or Linda?
I have a thought with the businesses that aren't your tenants, the impact that it will have on them. And I'd like to possibly get some feedback from them on how they'll survive with all the construction going on when they are trying to keep their businesses viable.
Well, each tenant is a little bit different. I'll just go down the
No,
block.
not your tenants,
Oh,
other property owners that have.
across the street.
Yeah.
Sure, that's an excellent.
Because
point.
that will definitely affect their businesses. And what is their input on? Have you made conversations with them or just gotten feedback from a lot of them on how they will deal with that impact?
Well, I'm certainly going to try and help them. And probably the biggest single factor is when the parking is taken off of First Street, where there are 27 spaces from something around 27 spaces from 119 to Snyder. So those 27 spaces will be gone. The town has now passed an ordinance where you can have paid parking in residential zones. 100 East First Street, where the proposed bridge would go, would also handle 60 cars. So during the construction, I would increase the parking and lose the 27, but I could put 60 cars on 100 East First Street. And I put that lot there originally as a gesture to those folks on the south side of the street that I wanted to help them in two ways. One, if they go to redevelop, they will need retention pond facilities. And there's very little ability for them to put water retention, and stormwater retention on their properties. But the pond that's already there has the capacity to help both sides of the block. There's enough capacity for stormwater runoff to be contained in that retention pond alone for everybody. So that's my biggest concern, is parking for them. So if we increase the parking, at least on a temporary basis, so that there's a lot more space, and it has helped them in the time that it's been there. So by increasing the parking, I think they probably will be able to sustain their incomes. Yes, it'll be inconvenient. Of course, it is. Any development is going to create some problems. And that's one of the ways I see doing it. I am quite willing to consider any other ideas that somebody has. If you have an idea, please bring it forward. Because these are the only two that I have to answer that question.
Well, it certainly helps. I mean, adding all of those spots, I mean, that was a concern I had, is what happens when a lot of this construction goes on all at once. It disrupts, businesses. I was up in Estes Park about 3 weeks ago, and as you're probably aware, they are tearing up all of the main street right there. And it's going to be another year and a half, I guess, before that construction is done. And I talked to a few of the shop owners, and they're very concerned about it because they've already seen a drop in their, business.
Mm-hmm.
So having, the idea of doing it in phases, so you're not just disrupting everything at once, I think was, an option that I think you had originally talked about doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also, I should say this too, that we're planning on moving the fronts of the building back 25 feet. On those drawings, you see there's a green line there. And a lot of the construction equipment would normally be out in the street. If you brought the buildings right to the property line, those vehicles such as forklift trucks and sheetrock lifts and all the things that you need immediately adjacent to the side of the building would be within the property itself. So you would still have traffic able to go down First Street.
Mhm.
But just for reasons of safety, you don't want to be dropping bricks on cars parked adjacent to it. So we'd have to vacate the north side
Mhm.
and not allow parking there.
Yeah,
So-
no, obviously.
So, but in terms of, and also that 25-foot space has another function, and that is to create a much more pedestrian-friendly
Mhm.
area. And also to be able to accommodate 10 by 10 tents. There would be little platforms on the concrete or leveled spaces to where we could have event tents all around the building, not in the street at all. So you could still have traffic in the street and have event tents, not only around the building, but inside the courtyard too.
Mhm.
So I think one of the unique things about Nederland and its business community is the attraction of events. And I think if you plan to have that, I think that would help the businesses at post-construction. Your question though really is what to do during construction.
Right.
So if you have ideas, please share them with me because I'm very open to, and this has been a long project. I've had a
Yes.
lot of public input over the 10 years that I've been working on it.
Have you had feedback from other businesses as to your plan?
Yes, I have. Mhm. I've talked with every owner on the other side.
And if
With,
you could bring some of that information, or if they could, it would be helpful.
there is a fear of the merchants that they do not want to be involved in the politics of this project. They feel that if they take a side, since there is opposition, I'm very attuned to the opposition, they feel they might lose customers. It's a very legitimate concern, just as the Estes Park folks are
Yeah.
worried. So they're worried that they'd lose customers during construction, legitimate, trying to answer. They're worried that if they get involved in supporting it and there's customers they have that are against it, they'd lose them as a customer. And so they're reticent to put in writing and come and support it. They'll tell me personally they'd love to have it. 300 car parking garage appeals to everybody.
Mhm.
And they're not at all against that. But I also am friends with a lot of these people, so I don't want to impose on them. So, but if you'd like to talk to them, I'm sure you could, of course, we're all welcome to talk to anybody we want. And bring me feedback.
A subject that you're willing to answer on that. But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm willing to talk to anybody. And I don't decline any conversation with somebody that wants to talk to me about it.
Well, one of the suggestions I originally had was when you talked about having the lots, the parking in those other lots was to maybe have tents or some kind of, to help the businesses continue to, thrive where they're away from the construction, but yet they're accessible. I know there's only so much land and parking is a, key part of that, but I was just thinking of a way to have some temporary, business areas where,
Yeah,
like.
and there are some spaces available,
Yeah.
for example, where the Rotterdam is going to be. There's a vacant lot there that will hold 12 cars.
Mhm.
Nobody uses it now because it's a little bit out of the way. You
Yeah.
have to go down north on Snyder and then right on Third and past that apartment building that's not square to the lot. It's a triplex that the Grand family used to own. And there, so that would be one area where there could be parking. That item up on the hillside will also take about 25 cars. I use it right now for storage for mulch and building supplies and equipment. It's just a storage yard for servicing what is there now. So that would be probably 25 cars that we could use for. One of the biggest problems with parking in the downtown area is, well, there's three different categories. Employees who could park somewhere else but don't, park right in front of their own businesses. And no matter how much their employers and the owners of the business ask them to move, there's employee turnover, and they just keep coming back. So that's one of the reasons for charging for parking. You were the guys that recommended the town charge for parking for the very same reasons. So again, I'm talking a lot more than I intended to.
No, that's okay. No, because that helps us understand, you know, the problems a little bit more, that you've thought through them and so forth. So,
One thing I will just add, and I hope you had a chance to look at it, is when Ron held his open house, he solicited comments and feedback and had people write them down, and he had his team collect all of the questions, and then they responded to all of them. The positive ones, the negative ones, all of the above. And so that's in your packet as a part of the narrative. And so I do think that was a really great strategy of their team, is to make sure that they took it all. And of course, there's many more questions to come, but there was no question that they didn't respond to. I saw the original list of questions, and they did do their due diligence in making sure that they commented on every single one of them.
Hey, Ron. So I just wanted to follow up on a couple of things. It says in here you anticipate a 5 to 10 year construction time period, but I wonder if you said earlier, it sounded like you told us that there would be 2 to 3 years between each individual project, which times 6 would be 12 to 15 possibly.
I'm sorry?
12 to 15 years is the.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Again, what are economic conditions going to be? I don't want to get caught where Mr. Von Feller did, and nobody wants a skeleton in the middle of town that isn't completed. That's probably the worst thing that can happen to Nederland, in my opinion.
Well, I agree. And that seems like such a long period of time that we could have that economy turn down that you're talking about in 5 years, and you will be 1 building, 2 buildings into this project. What happens then?
I don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, let's say the worst happens. We have another economic.
Well, I guess I could use an example right here in town of where that happened.
Yeah.
That was the shopping center. John Doctor built the shopping center. The economy turned down and he lost it. It was foreclosed on. And so the bank took it over and immediately sold it. The people that took it over for the second go around couldn't make it any better, and they lost it. It was foreclosed on a second time. So the Gershiel family then took it over and got it going fairly well. But by that time, more people had moved into town, there was more demand for services and shops. And they also had the financial ability to cut the rents in half so that they weren't, every commercial landlord is partners with his tenant. If they don't succeed and he doesn't help them succeed, both are going to fail. So commercial landlords are very different from residential landlords. They have to be mentors. They have to help their tenants. They have to provide services for them. And I had, at the open house, I had one chap that came, and I think he was a small businessman. And there are plenty of shopping centers who take advantage of their tenants with what are called common area fees. They don't make any money renting, they owe the rent, but their monthly fees for the so-called services they give the tenants are extremely high. The same thing happens in big apartment complexes where homeowners associations end up being actually owned by the developer. And I know about this because I bought a condo for my daughter when she went to med school, and that's what happened. The developer made no money selling. He made it by raising the condo fees. So This fellow was one of the negative people, and he even sent a letter in the record that's very demeaning. And I understood why. He got caught in some situation like that. I sure hope that my tenants, if you talk to them, will give me a good report. So,
Well, it sounds like you're saying there's no guarantees in life, and yeah, that could happen. That's what it sounds like you're telling me.
yeah. How could I say anything different?
Yeah. Well,
I just speak-
but part of our deal is to try and look how we protect the town so we don't have that skeleton you were just talking about.
Well,
And
performance bonds are pretty much the way to go. You,
well, let's take that to another step.
okay.
You get 2 buildings in, the economy's taking a downturn. Is there a possibility you're going to say, okay, we got to reassess, everything's kind of gone into the toilet here, and so we're not going to build the last 4 buildings of this project, you know, we're going to stick with what we got. You know, we're just trying to understand what the possible outcomes could be if things, worst case scenario happens. We have a war, shipping costs, everything goes up, construction costs triples, you know, more than it is now. And suddenly you're 4 years, 5 years from now, you got one building built, you're starting another one, and suddenly the whole plan
Collapses.
Yeah. What do we do? I mean, you're saying the performance bond would at least allow for the completion of the existing building that is
Well,
in the process?
you're
or-
working with a bank who foreclosed on the project, just like what the town had to do with the shopping center when it went bust.
Yeah.
When they foreclose on something, the basis goes down because all the bank wants is their money out of it. So all the equity that the developer had is lost. So a new person coming in, buying something out of foreclosure has a great leg up. Quite often, the second guy has much better ability than the first guy.
So he gets more favorable terms.
So
Yeah.
a bunch of scenarios exist. What would happen? Well, somebody might say the reason this went broke was Mr. Mitchell was not a good manager. And therefore we want to do something different. They would have to come back to you and go through the whole process of a redevelopment plan and convince you that their plan was better and to approve it.
Okay.
So
There's risk. There's risk for you, there's risk for the town, but you're trying to eliminate as much of that as possible.
yeah,
So let me go to another thing. There's several, or there's underground parking in here, and I've heard multiple people tell me, what about the water table? Has there been engineering studies that you can dig down that deep and provide this 60-car underground parking? Has there been? I don't know.
no, we haven't done that.
Yeah.
But I often mention to people that these are easily solved problems by hydrologists and civil engineers. And Washington, D.C. is entirely built on a swamp.
That's true.
And then you have a height limit there of 14 stories because nothing can be higher than the Capitol. So you have, in terms of weight pushing on a marsh, huge amount of pressure. So they've solved it in various ways. I had a hotel in Washington, D.C. for many years, and the developers built buildings all around this hotel. And they actually supported my hotel to where they stopped it from sinking because they had to. So as much as people are concerned about that, I'm confident that there are civil engineers that can handle that with ease.
Okay, let me ask another question here. I was looking at your anticipated development schedule in here. It talks about the final application shall be filed within 1 year of approval of the preliminary application. Due to the size of this development, the applicant will need 5 years to complete all the necessary plans and studies required under the final PUD. Therefore, Ron is requesting that the preliminary PUD, that if it is approved, that he be granted additional time to complete the final PUD. So I just want to get a little more clarification on that. If it's going to take 5 years to complete the plans, are we looking at 6, 7 years from now before any ground is broken?
Oh, no. We would hope to get ground broken in less than 2 years for the Amsterdam.
Ron, maybe I can just clarify that's a little bit of a limitation of code. So currently in code, there's only 1 year between preliminary and final, but there's a series of studies that need to be done. And so really recognizing kind of from even final to development, there's limitations there in terms of the timeline. So Ron is kind of seeking a variance to that because that 1 year is unrealistic given the size of this proposal.
Yeah, so that would be part of the PUD, would be that request, right? Or is that a separate?
No, that was going to be a part of his request, was to have that be an amendment to that 1 year stipulation, because the 1 year stipulation says that if you can't do it within a year, you can come back to the planning commission and ask for that extension. Ron's saying up front, that's unrealistic, given the size of this, that it's unrealistic. So he's asking for that extension instead of coming back to you in a year and saying, sorry. So that's just the clarification of why that's there. It's because of how our code stipulates the return. I'm not quite sure that I realize you have more questions than just that, but I just wanted to clarify that this is dictated by code.
Well, I guess I'm confused on then how you could get the Amsterdam going and have that within 2 years if the final PUD isn't approved, because you're going to ask for possibly 5 years to complete all the plans and studies under what this is. Am I misreading this somehow? I'm on page 12.
Right. No, so I think, what page 12 is saying is that, under preliminary, in order, you have to come back within a year. So, but if given the green light to continue forward with the design of this proposal, it's just a year is not enough time given how large this is. And so really under the preliminary PUD process, Ron is seeking that agreement to be that he has 5 years to bring back all of the plans, but that he can do it in a staggered approach. So the intention is that, hypothetically, obviously Ron is much more prepared on Amsterdam than any of them. So while he would need 5 years, in 1 year could likely come forward with Amsterdam and say, I'm ready for this for final PUD consideration. And then year 2, potentially bring Rotterdam. Year 3, bring another piece. And so do a phased approach in terms of bringing the different parcels forward. Because it's going to take time to do all of the necessary studies, and some parcels need more studies than others.
Okay, but I thought we were talking about trying to get all of them approved in one, so I'm getting more confused than ever now.
It's the preliminary PUD process bringing it forward. So the intention is still to approve it. If you're saying yes to preliminary PUD, you're really saying you support this, keep going, that you're really even at preliminaries trying to kind of negotiate down or negotiate in every direction. What are the final conceptual design components here? I don't think there's any good faith in allowing someone under a preliminary PUD to say, yes, go forward. And then the intention is to deny a final.
Yeah.
You're really saying under preliminary, when you get to final, we're just kind of tying a bow on it. But yes, it's at the final that Ron's seeking to stagger it. But preliminarily, you've looked at the whole proposal and you're comfortable with the proposal as a whole.
So what happens if we are 2 buildings into construction and something changes before the final PUD on the 3rd building?
Because I don't really know what would change, because the preliminary would have kind of stipulations about what the expectations are of that building. It doesn't become a free for all. Like if it's, setbacks are this, height is this, Rod doesn't get to come back and be like, fine, I want setbacks to be this. Under number
all right. Let me rephrase the question. So you were saying the final PUD is going to be, we're going to really talk about, the final, look of the building, all those things. We have a major disagreement on how that's going to be, or something in the first building that's being built we've seen some unanticipated problems, and now I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, that should be discussed at preliminary. What's interesting about the code as it stands right now is that there's really not a lot of difference between the preliminary PUD evaluating criteria and the final PUD. There's actually only 3 additional bullet points, and it's like landscaping and some strange things. So really at preliminary, that's when you're deciding all of these things, the setbacks, the character, by maybe design, because we don't have design standards codified. Those are things that may be left for negotiation. Kind of the structure of the building, the footprint of this building should really be hashed out under the preliminary PUD. Like Ron should be going into final knowing exactly how he's supposed to design these structures based on preliminary PUD conversation. So I guess my hope is that you're not getting to final feeling like there was a 180 because you would have had all of those conversations under the preliminary. And it was very clear and concise, leaving the preliminary, exactly what is being approved from a design, or recommended for approval under a design criteria, under your PUD criteria.
Okay, what protections does the town have if we approve it and we think it's going to be 95% what we approved, and then in the process, in the construction process, something changes? What recourse does the town have to enforce and ensure that the plan sticks with what it was? I guess I'm just trying to learn.
Yeah, it's a good thing we got Attorney Madsen on. So I would turn that over to Attorney Madsen. I think in many ways, stop build, of course, is always an option, or reconsideration of the PUD. But Jennifer, I would be curious, your answer to that.
Well, any PUD is going to have a provision in it related to amendments, and it's going to govern how amendments can be processed. And so it would have to go through that provision of the PUD. That's,
Well,
it really, it's going to depend on what the changes are.
I mean, I think this is Chair Williams. I think, Jim, part of your question may be, just to clarify, is a project of this size, there are going to be changes. I mean, it's especially over such a large period of time and so forth, construction costs change, everything like that. So I guess and correct me if I'm wrong, but is the question, do we have to keep revisiting this one PUD over and over again, right? Or does it get changed? How does the the final get changed?
I mean, I think you actually did a PUD a few years ago. You set a very specific height limit for a structure. When we are going to go for CO, we determined that you set the height for 24 feet and 1 inch, and they were 24 feet and 7 inches. And we told them to bring it down. They had to do the work to bring it down because that was not in compliance with their PUD. So that was a financial situation they ended up in, but that was the agreement. The alternative for them is like they could have come before you and said, whoops, sorry, but that's not what was agreed upon. So as staff, we're checking in throughout the way and saying like, if you have a setback where you agreed to 15 feet, but they're 13 feet, well, they got to go back, and at various points throughout the project, verifying compliance with those different areas of the PUD.
So that's the protection that you're asking about.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what our our code enforcement team, our building official team, I mean, all of us have a responsibility to make sure that the document that is approved is then built to those specs.
So I know you have lots of free time and you're just looking for extra things to do, but a project of this scope and size that's going to run for 10 to 12 years for continuity, I mean, you may not want to stay here for 12 years and oversee this. Is there a plan to hire some kind of a project manager to represent the town, or a consultant? I don't even know, that would help kind of be the representative of the town so that you and Britt are not suddenly spending half of your actual working hours trying to deal with issues with this project?
Yeah, so I haven't talked about that yet, but you do kind of see in the AIM and some other parts of this that we recognize there is a larger there are impacts. There's impacts, not only during the development, but there's impacts to water and sewer. Law enforcement has said potentially needing more law enforcement. The board and planning commission, when this comes forward as an official application, really needs to start kind of diving into that and thinking about that. And while Ron is not at a place of course, committing to what are those fees, I mean, he understands that the need to discuss them is going to be required in this process, is to evaluate impact, cost share. Not everything can just fall on a developer if there's larger benefits, but yet Ron has a responsibility to participate and be a part of those conversations about impact. And so that could be something the board could consider, is wanting, or a recommendation of the planning commission that you would want to see town contract more with Safe Build or, you know, bring on project management temporarily, you'd want to see that more robust staffing to provide oversight. So yes, not currently being discussed, but I think everything's kind of on the table in a PUD, and that could be one of the components.
Yeah, I think one of the advantages to the town is that if you had a dedicated project manager, he's part of the team that you talked about, that can not just look out over the town, but be kind of the conduit so that, you know, the rest of town staff just doesn't get overwhelmed at all. And it may be more than one person. I don't know. But yeah, I'm thinking that there has to be some structure in place to accomplish a project of this size and protect the town at the same time.
Well, that's kind of what I was getting at is something to kind of go along with continuity and be meeting with you. And then at these meetings and at the BOT meetings, that's the person that comes and is able to answer questions, as opposed to Miranda or Britt has to be involved day to day on what's going on so that they know what's happening. I would say that would be something that I will definitely be recommending, but I'm just one vote.
I was gonna mention, I think it's important to educate you guys as well. When the plans come to me, typically we will hold like DRC meetings, and it's like JVA, our town engineer, myself, Miranda, our building official. And so we're like prepping these people before they go. We're looking into code. We would have this PUD document. And once that is approved, then these plans go to Safe Built, and then Safe Built, with having also this document, would push back on Ron and his team if it was not complying with that. And then there's also inspections that happen along the entire process of this building that are according to IBC, which is your International Building Code. So, and when Safe Built catches it, they do make people comply. If somebody is over, if they catch that somebody is doing way more than they told us according to the plans. And so I do think there are some of those in check as well, that are just the everyday, we do this to everyone. Like this happens to everyone's, I mean, remodel to new construction. So I do think, yeah, there's probably more that goes into it, but Safe Built he would have essentially a card that says, these are the inspections that take place. And if he doesn't comply with them, then they would say, nope, you failed. So you need to go back and figure this out before they let him move forward. So I do think there are some of those in place, and with also how this is being sectioned, I do think it's probably, I mean, I can't say for certain, but I don't know that there's necessarily a ton of work that I would be doing, because Safe Built would be catching with this document. And it might be, you know, Andrew Jocelyn, the fire marshal, would be going by and making sure, are we in compliance with, you know, is everything in compliance from a fire standpoint, or, you know, our code enforcement officer. So I don't know what that looks like more, but there are these in check already, and that would apply to a PUD aspect as well.
Right,
So
but
just to let you all know.
but they still have to interface with somebody. And all I think we're suggesting is that if there was a dedicated project manager that worked for the town but was part of Ron's team, that could be the
Yeah.
conduit, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
Rather than, you know, we're concerned about you getting bogged down with day-to-day things. Say Safe Built comes back and says, oh, I've got a list of things that need attention.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Somebody has to deal with that.
Yeah, it would be, he would have a point of contact, because when Safe Built, typically I'm looking weekly, and when Safe Built says, this is on hold, we're not approving these plans, denial, I send that to whoever that person that applied for the application and say, all right, you know, here's what Safe Built's feedback is. If you have a question, you need to contact them directly. Because it's their inspector, it's their, you know, planner. So yeah, there would need to be like a point of contact, and I see what you guys are saying.
Yeah,
I think
that's
there's
all.
value in that, but it does, in my role, I say, this is your responsibility, because I'm helping you through it. I've already helped you to, this is our code. This is what this is, but I can't walk you through how you need to amend those plans. It's in black and white for you.
Right.
So yeah, something his team would have to think about.
Okay.
Ron, how are you going to deal with I've seen your website. It's excellent. I appreciate the hard work you put into it. I saw the addressing all the concerns by the public. But I'm going to say that I think those concerns are still going to be there. And when we get down to the brass tacks of this getting passed by the BOT, I think you're going to have that group of people that are going to be out saying, you're going to remake our entire little mining town into this Estes Park wannabe, and you're going to have the naysayers coming out just like they will for the childcare center. What's your plan to try and win some of those folks over? Or is it basically it's going to be, well, if it gets passed, you guys just have to pound sand?
It's really hard, and I've run across it a lot in my life. When somebody's got their mind made and their decision made, and they tell you so, and that they're not going to change it. The question is it worth your time? I guess it's the answer. The question is going to be to the board. Is this project worth it to the town? Does it bring you enough income? Does it create more safety for people? You have First Street with everybody walking in the street. You have sidewalks that are just hazards. So it's going to be your decision. Is this overall a benefit to the town, or those who are against it and going to stay against it no matter what? Yeah, I have in mind a child care center. I had in my plan a child care center before the whole proposal ever came about using the town site. And because there's a need there, there's a desperate need. And here's how I see what happens with that need. When children start in the school system in town, they'll stay in it. But when we only had a couple of years ago 11 children in kindergarten, if we only have 11 seniors in high school, the school board's going to close that high school. That's a given. You can see that coming. So if the high school closes and all the kids go down below to go to school, to me, that says your downtown is going to dry up. That's a huge risk if there's no families that are using the facilities, particularly in the wintertime for the merchants here. This is a tough town to make it in the winter, and those merchants desperately need the locals to. And if the locals are going down to Boulder to pick up their kids and their activities and their ballet lessons and their swimming lessons, whatever, we're just going to be a bedroom community with no downtown. That's the way I see it. So I'm real pro childcare center, and I'm one of the benefactors. I've provided scholarships for the teen center. And I was encouraged to put in this application some of the things I've done for the town in the past, because I'm not normally one to blow my horn about what I've done for the town. But I have done a lot of things. And it's like the things that I see that are needed. We need that second bridge. And one of the reasons I bought that piece of property was so at some point we end up with a bridge there. We negotiate somehow that this becomes part of this project. And then for those folks who are against this, do they really think that we don't need another exit, a second bridge? Since I came here 65 years ago, people have been talking about a second bridge. I'm trying to facilitate it, but I can't do it without the whole picture being looked at by you guys, and it's your decision as to whether or not this project overall is good for the town or is not. And those people will scream, and they screamed when the shopping center was built, but they go over there and buy groceries.
All right, I will stop pestering you with what ifs here in just a minute and say that, yes, I recognize that people don't, just like I said before, people hate change, but change is inevitable. You know, we're going to have to do something with this town. And so I appreciate you bringing forward some ideas here. I think that it's going to be big. It's going to be big for our community. So I hope it works. I hope it all works. I hope that the amount of retail that you have planned for First Street is right now, I'll go the other way. So I think that to help win some people over, what I would suggest is people keep asking the same question. What's going to happen with the construction, traffic, with the businesses that are across the street? If you could be a little more detailed when you come forward with us, come forward and present this, a little more detailed and say, here's how we're going to not allow the deli to go out of business because no one could get down First Street anymore to get to his business, or it's such a hassle because there's so many trucks coming in and out that no one wants to even think about turning down First Street anymore to visit any of those businesses. So there's got to be some more than I'm going to help mitigate it. Okay, but give us a few ideas on how that's going to work. I think that will be helpful. When do you anticipate having this? If you had your way right now, you said we're going to, I thought we were going to see this in January, but if you had your way right now, when would is your timeline to try and get this actual full PUD before us and go, get through the SRU process and have it voted and through by the BOT?
5 years ago.
5 years ago. Okay. So now
5 years ago.
Yeah. So now what do you want it to be? If you're still talking about 2 months before are we going to, I think if you're wanting to get it before this BOT goes up for election, we got to have something next month. If you're talking about 2 or 3 months.
Well, one of the things that were asked for was traffic study. We're working with JVA.
Yeah.
And that meeting isn't until January.
So maybe I could just say, so Ron, one of the reasons why Ron pulled back is Ron really would like to come with all the components for a final, and recognizing that that's not required at the preliminary, but really wants to just have all the pieces pulled together so you can just have the conversation. In many ways to kind of avoid what you're saying is like only talking about a little portion of it under preliminary and then the rest under final. There's again only 3 differences between preliminary and final. So Ron decided to pull back and do the necessary studies to hit those last 3 bullet points so that when he comes for a preliminary, it's all packaged together. So that's kind of a part of that motivating factor is there's really no reason not to do it now.
Okay. I ask again, when do you think this SRU is going to get before us officially? Roughly. Give me an approximation.
April.
Okay. Thank you.
April or May, probably after the election.
Okay.
Because
I can't see it happening before the election.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
I mean, if you have a traffic study and there's a whole list I noticed in the packet of, questions from town staff about everything from traffic flow to parking to, those all have to be addressed as part of the PUD. So that takes time.
Well, and town civil engineer, I mean, I have entrances and exits located where my civil engineer thought this is where they should be, but the town civil engineer might have a totally different idea. And I'm open to discussion, changes. I guess one of the things I could say one of the things that bothers me is that there's a lot of worry about me and the process and everything else. And I worry about, is this really going to be good for the town? This is your decision. In terms of, will it increase the budget of the town enough to where you can fill the potholes? Will it increase the town budget enough to where you'll be able to escrow enough money if it raises the use of the sewer system to where it requires, what is it, a study?
Now, once the plan gets to 70%, we need to start evaluating expansion, and at 80%, we need to actually have plans to expand water and sewer.
I guess my question to you is, do you think a guy would spend 30 years assembling properties very carefully, paying premium prices sometimes to do it if he didn't really want to do something for the town?
I would say that wasn't a good business plan.
So Miranda, one of the thoughts I had just reviewing everything was, I wonder if it's worth having at least a joint workshop or something with the BOT before Ron puts his application in. And I think it will help Ron as well. I mean, it was a tremendous help for the housing assessment because there was a lot of misunderstanding and so forth. A project of this size is just so complicated that it might be, I just thinking it might be useful to have a special meeting or two or whatever. I mean, it's just helps more discussion.
And no, Ron welcomes all discussions, I think.
No,
I think
right.
we are looking for that. Yeah, I think happy to the Board of Trustees knew you were doing this, and I'm happy to go back to them and say if that is one of your recommendations
Yes.
coming out of this,
Yep.
that you would be interested in doing that. The board is also taking a similar approach to you, and that they do want to talk about things before the applications come forward.
Okay.
And we'll talk about that in a little bit for other projects. And so I do think they're interested, and they have talked to Ron. Ron has talked directly with board members, and you know, there's a variety of things with a lot of the acquisition Ron has done over the years that have kind of resulted in having to continuously talk about this project. You know, every time Ron was seeking to do that lot line consolidation he did last year, that is tied to this project. Every move Ron makes is tied to this project. And so I think that's a lot of the conversation we have to have is really recognizing, like, as staff, I'm really passionate about talking about this as a whole,
Yes.
because I think it's too hard when we try to piecemeal it, when everything really does have this connection to one another.
My only concern about having a joint workshop with the current board is that may all change come April, and we've done a lot of work and now we got to do it again.
Right. I think when Ron pulled his application, as staff, we did talk about that a bit, and recognizing that it's likely this board will change. And so, yes, and I think all conversation is better than no conversation. And whether those board members are on the board, they're still representatives of this community. I think it's still worth the conversation. I appreciate Ron and his team just wanting to hear as much as they possibly can, so that hopefully there's no surprises when they finally apply,
Right.
because they've talked through a lot of this. So I think, Ron, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I think you are interested, regardless of who the board is, to just keep talking.
I would certainly love to see you come back maybe if you're looking at April, May for this SRU packet to come to us officially. Maybe this, as Steve was talking, we could do some kind of a joint workshop in I don't know, maybe February or March. And I would love to see you try to answer as many of the concerns that came up from the different staff areas as you can before that meeting. And so we could literally try to knock out as many of, hey, because I've seen you take that proactive approach on your website. Here's what the people are saying. Here's our answers. And I love that you were just honest on your website. When people say, it's going to change our funky little vibe of our town, you said, yep. Progress is like that. When you move forward, it changes things, and you're just direct and honest. And I think that's the approach that you probably ought to take is I'm never going to make everybody happy. Change is hard, but if we're going to move forward, this is the path. Or you could sit here and have those same buildings there 20 years from now. So I think that's the approach to take is just try and answer the questions, and that you're going to have a bunch of people that are against it, and we're going to drive forward if we get the votes, and that's the way it is. But certainly try to answer as many of the concerns as possible up front. And then when somebody comes up to me before this application gets turned in.
Sure trying, and
Yeah,
I'll sit down with staff.
Yeah.
And staff is quite willing if they have more questions.
Yeah.
Well,
the things in the packet that I don't have it right in front of me, but just like Steve was saying, all the different areas came up with, hey, these are the concerns we have, and so address as many of those things as possible.
Yeah, his team, I was gonna say his team has started working on it. I just didn't have enough to put it in the packet yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess we didn't. I realized that maybe the aim, Britt and I talked about it, like, do we add it? Do we not add it? The aim maybe comes across like that Ron doesn't have a response. We did verbally talk with Ron, got Ron's initial response, but many things were like, we need to come back to you, like meeting with our engineering team. And so Ron is aware of everything that was in that. But yes, we kind of wanted to give you as much information as we had ready to go
Sure.
from the preliminary PUD side as we could. But again, I really do appreciate Ron and his team. They're very communicative with staff, meeting with us constantly and hearing our concerns and then taking the necessary steps to start to address them either in the moment or to obtain the information so that they can address it.
Well, as I said, if we have this joint workshop, perhaps members of Ron's team could come and help address that or answer maybe even some technical questions that, you know, you don't have to do. And then maybe that's a good start, is to start to knock off those individual concerns or questions from town staff or maybe even the public, and then we may be bringing up stuff as well. I don't want to monopolize this. I mean, the rest of the commissioners, I want to give them an opportunity, but being 10 o'clock, we need to have a motion to, thank you.
I make a motion to extend the meeting to 10:30.
I second.
Okay. Do we have to vote on that?
Can you just say all in favor? And
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
I
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to get a little bit more comment, and then we have to open it up to public comment if there is any. I don't know if anyone's on at this point, so I will open it up to public comment, and if there's none, I will close it, and we'll move on to okay. Okay, so other commissioners, including ones online, any input, questions, comments at this point?
I noticed, this is Commissioner Glasser, I noticed in a lot of the public comments, flat roofs were an issue. Flat roofs
Flat roofs.
were an issue. And is that possibly going to be changed because of the snow loads and the?
I would really like to have some peaked roofs, very much. I think they're much more attractive than flat roofs. And we have a saying in the industry that flat roofs, it's not a question if they're going to leak. It's question is always
When.
when.
Yeah.
So to be able to make it pencil out economically, I really have to have 3 stories.
And well, and just looking at the comments, that was one comment that was a big issue, the flat roof.
I see, but I noticed with the child care center, that was almost flat roofs. They were shed roofs with probably a 15% grade or 10% grade. So they're close to flat roofs. And there are a lot of flat roofs in town. The roofs that are peaked right now are old houses that have been converted. The Decent Bagel is a house with a peaked roof. The vet clinic is a house with a peaked roof, long past their functional use for what they were designed for. So
It just seemed to be a concern from a lot of people.
and this is a concern from the fire department too, because they only have a 35-foot ladder. And if there's a peaked roof, they're going to need a 60-foot ladder. These are the questions that have to be answered. And I don't have an answer because the economics dictate making a return for the investors who create it. And if they don't envision that there is one, they won't do it. So I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah. And a lot of concern goes back to the blizzard of '03, where even here, we had
Yeah.
collapsed roofs from the weight. Yeah.
Well, you never know what your problems are going to be. I'll just give you an example. Within the last 2 months, somebody took a burrito wrapped in an aluminum foil cover and threw it on the roof of the covered wagon. The covered wagon has a flat roof. And the ravens came along and started pecking it apart. And they pecked over 200 holes in the roof. So flat roofs will leak eventually. And so we had to get up there and fill every one of those holes and curse the ravens. And what? And the burrito, yeah. But this is.
Must have been a good burrito.
So I just can't answer that question.
I think more than it being a question it was just an observation how many other people made that comment about flat roofs. So it is something that people notice directly.
Mhm. I definitely think peaked roofs and shed roofs are much more attractive. I agree with them. It's just does it make the economics work? Does the fire department approve? If they can't fight a fire with a peaked roof because it's too high to get there, they have to have, I've been talking with the fire department actually today, and they got to have a hose that points down. They can't shoot it up in the air because if they do, it creates steam. They got to get water in droplet form or in fluid form onto a fire, and they can't have it shooting up the air and having it create steam. So that means they've got to have a method to shoot down. So, okay.
Okay, anyone else here before we get too late? Any suggestions, comments?
So a little while ago, you mentioned the possibility of a task force and joint meeting with the BOT, and you talked about
Could you get a little closer to the mic?
Sure,
Thank you.
but not too close. Very sensitive. So I was thinking about what you'd said about not having all of the team members on a jet, and I'd love to hear what team members of yours would you not allow in the same airplane at the same time? I'd love to meet them.
Well, the agreement I signed years ago was not one person.
Yeah.
Everybody had to be on a different flight.
Yeah. Yeah. My question was more, who are those people for you and on this project?
Oh, they'd be the architects, the designers, the engineer, all the key people that you're going to rely on, who are the heads of companies who would maybe need to go to a supplier, for instance. The structural engineer may want to go to a steel supplier's yard and make sure,
of course,
that sort of thing, and it might be in Pittsburgh.
Do you know who these people are? The very top level ones at this point?
I do.
Okay.
I'm working with a local architect, David Davenport, on the residential buildings. Oz Architecture will probably be doing the rest of the work. There's a local contractor that I highly respect named Andrew DeWart and his partner, Hunter Harris. Excuse me, Hunter Harris.
Okay.
The town civil engineer. I have my own civil engineer. It's how can I forget the name? My God, I've used them so much. They're in Lafayette. Trying to use as many local professionals as I can, because I'm very much attuned to the idea of trying to keep the money in our local economy.
I like
But
that.
there are just some professionals that don't live in Nederland, and the town doesn't hire very many consultants, so they're are in Nederland. The rest of the people would be bid contractors, so I would leave that up to the general to select those. He has been bugging me to start meeting with some of these people. And as Miranda said, I don't think we've anywhere near vetted the questions yet. So I've been reluctant to talk to these people until I really have an idea that there is community support, at least from the decision makers.
That makes sense.
I mean, I find very honestly that the people who are against it make a lot of noise. So they appear to have a bigger vote than their voice. So,
Yeah, thank you.
okay.
That's helpful.
That's a good question.
Right.
Timmy, anything to add?
No. Yeah, I mean, just other medium level detailed questions that.
Can you get a little closer? to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
microphone?
I just have a few other sort of medium level detailed questions that don't need to be answered here now. So all good for me.
Thank you.
Okay,
I did, sorry.
go ahead.
I did have one further thought, and this was kind of a follow-up on the concern about the flat roofs as well as what Jim had said about change being inevitable. And change is inevitable. But the second part of that is the direction of change isn't always. And I know that you're trying to do something good for the town. I just want you to know that, like, I see that. I know that you wouldn't have spent this much energy and time without really caring about Nederland, and I see that. I also see in the resistance, the people that are opposed to this.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm saying, so my second thought is that the people that oppose this and steadfastly oppose it, I can only imagine that you have been met with anger, to put it mildly, on a great number of occasions. To philosophically and psychologically digress for a moment, anger is a secondary emotion. The thing that happens before anger is fear. And what I see, and this is my own personal observation, is that people are afraid that the Nederland that this plan may embody, they may not recognize that. I think they're afraid of that. And this goes into like I think that's at the core of the concern about the flat roofs. This isn't a question, and you could of course respond to it, but I somehow felt it was important to share that thought, that is, the resistance is out of fear.
I think that you're absolutely right. It's sort of fear of the unknown. And I think I have some of that myself. So I actually identify with that. All the what if questions that keep constantly coming. Sometimes I realize that fear is the factor that produces the question. But nevertheless, we're a country that was founded on bravery, and the pilgrims who came in the Mayflower, the astronauts who went to the moon, went into uncharted territory. And there was plenty of fear from all sides.
We're all human. We're all afraid. Thanks.
Stephanie, you still on?
I sure am.
Okay.
No more questions at this time. This has been really helpful, though. It's been interesting to read through the materials, and I appreciate Ron taking the time to come and talk to us.
Okay. Any suggestions for Ron?
A lot of them were covered. In particular, I think giving the clarity around the questions that Jim were asking were some of the same ones I had in terms of the timing. I think making sure there's a clear timeline that's packaged in a way that can be understood is going to be really important.
Okay. So what do you think of, having like a joint workshop with the BOT on this?
Yeah, I think that probably makes sense. If we do that, I guess I'm trying to figure out if that's informational to get us all on the same page, or if we're, and just to kind of make sure, kind of have this type of session again with the BOT, or do we have specific questions that we're trying to get answered?
Well, I think the general thought that I had was to kind of go through a lot of the questions that the town has, or perhaps even BOT or planning commission members have as well, that needs to be addressed. And we just start to knock them off. And it's not just to Ron, it was be to his team as well. So I still think it would be useful.
I think it would be useful. I think, the part that I still need to get I think the part that's still needs the most clarity, in, there's the construction and the architecture and the design of the buildings, like flat roofs. I guess that's, you know, I understand those concerns. But at the same time, I think for me, it's much more around the timing, and trying to understand how the project would actually get implemented. And as Jim was asking the same questions that I had around if something happens midway, which not that we're saying that would necessarily stop things, but what's the backup plan? How would we, as a town, adjust to that? And what would we be able to? Are we able to put any contingency plans in place? Things like that. Is there a time frame on the completion? Is there what kind of stipulations would we want to consider putting into an approval? So I think that that would probably be helpful for me to, in a working session, to have an opportunity to discuss with both the other planning commission members and the BOT.
No, absolutely, I agree. My son is a roads engineer, and for every project that he works on to design, they have to design what happens until that project is done, whether it's how you're going to direct the traffic flow, what has to be built to do that, and so forth. So that's a key part, I think, of this project, and that may allay a lot of the fears or concerns that people have. So perhaps that could be a discussion item at this meeting.
Sure, and it's a very legitimate
Yeah,
concern.
I agree. Okay, any other comments for Ron at this point?
My only
So-
comment for you, Ron, is, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, buddy. Is to say thank you. Thank you for continually being willing to come and talk to us about this and being open and taking all the grief and continually saying, well, this is my goal and I'm going to just keep plugging away at it. And so I appreciate your persistence and your vision for our town. Not everybody agrees with it. Some people would like to see changes, but I look at these comments and you might be right. This might be 50 people out of the entire town that have these strong opinions, and clearly the public didn't decide to show up tonight. So there's always going to be people that are going to squawk. I think that it would be good to see some progress for our town and to start to see some of this, but some of the things that would be good if we could. I understand it's expense to you to bring your team in, to come in and have a joint meeting with us, but I think it's all just greasing the skids to try and get this approved. So if you could, address some of the concerns that are there, bring a timeline, that would be great. An actual project timeline. Here it is. We're going to put it right up here on the TV. Here's a slide that shows where we think our end, in the military, we do backwards planning, right? Everything is, we start with the end state and we work backwards. Come with some kind of a timeline that says, hey, here's where we see this plan. Here's if there's some potential downfalls that may stretch to here. So what I look at a best case and worst case scenario. So best case scenario, you're talking about 12 years for this to be completed. Worst case, is it 20? What are the contingencies? And those are the kind of things that I think will make at least the people that are going to make the decisions feel comfortable. I mean, you're never going to have the public that's going to hear all the details that you're going to give to us. But if you can convince us and the BOT hey, I got a good plan here that I can't plan for everything. A meteor could come down and hit the project site. I don't know, if so, we'll just kind of deal with it then, but up until then, all reasonable planning has been done and here's the things that are going to be in place. But a timeline would be really nice.
Okay, what's driving the timeline is pretty much what the disruption would be. So if you're creating a mess in one part of the town, clean it up, go somewhere else, create your mess, clean it up. And because if you have 3 messes all over town, you're going to have a lot more angry people than if you just have 1 mess. So we can give you a timeline pretty easily. But there's always going to be the contingencies, whether or not we have a war, whether or not we have a shortage, labor supply, everybody. The fire department wants a new fire truck. It takes them 3 years. If they ordered it today, they wouldn't get it for 3 years.
Well,
Just
just
best case
best
scenario.
case scenario. I was just going to say that. Yeah.
The
And
12 years
that's all you
actually
can
is, in my opinion, is the worst case scenario. That's the worst case scenario.
I'm sorry. I thought you said there would be 2 to 3 years between each.
Well, that's 6 times 2.
Well, that's 2. Yeah. So that's, but that's what you're saying is your plan. And you just said that's the worst case scenario. So you're hopeful that it could be done a little sooner than that, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am hopeful that it could be done sooner.
So that would be what I would say. If you came with a timeline and said, hey, here it is, here's the deal, and here's how it's going to be phased. If you can kind of start to show that and okay, we're going to work on the Amsterdam and we're not going to tear up, the other side of town until this is complete and ready to go. And here's when we think that this is going to be done. We can't plan for everything, but I think that those are the kind of concrete things that you start to show. And I know we'll see this in the SRU, but you're trying to alleviate as many fears as possible before you get to that final, actually submitting the application. I just think that would be a really great thing. It would be great to see on your website, I think. And I think that it would just be something that would help the public kind of get their head around how is this going to work? And what's the impact going to be on me when I try to drive over to the RTD? I can't get through there anymore now because Ron's tearing up the road because he's got his project there and there's big cement trucks sitting there and I can't get in anymore. What am I going to do? And so those are the kind of things that's my feedback to you.
Okay. I hear you.
Okay. Well, I hope this was helpful. That you did get some, feedback. But so how would we go about, we just make a recommendation to the board then that we would prefer to have a joint
Yes.
workshop and have Ron and his team come, and the timing might be based upon answers to a lot of the questions we saw in the packet.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And I will find out from the Board of Trustees, what kind of availability looks like, and then we'll do the
Okay.
best schedule coordination we can.
Okay. All right.
One last thing, and I will stop talking, I promise, is then when people say, what if, what about? If you then confidently tell people, well, we'll deal with that problem and we'll fix it because our intention is not to inconvenience the residents of the town. So as these things come up, I'm going to address it. I'm going to fix it. And it's not going to sit there and be a huge problem that is going to inconvenience people for 3 months before we start even looking at it. So coming and saying and giving people assurances that, I can't plan for every single problem, but when they come up, we're going to get right on it, man. I promise you, we're going to fix those things and we're not going to do things. If it's reasonable and we can do it, we're going to address it.
I agree entirely, Jim. And I have some examples where I've done that for the town. So I'll bring those up. And I'll bring one up right now, just since you brought it up, because people are listening, lots of them. And that is when the town needed 1,000 square feet for a roundabout, I immediately gave it to them. That solved the problem.
I was not aware of that. That's good to know.
It's in the packet.
It's a big packet.
So I'm willing to do things like that. I have been, and I have done things like that. Thank you.
just keep assuring people and tell them, you know what, when they say the naysayers, I'll deal with that problem when it comes up. You know, I'm not gonna leave anybody out hanging out to dry. And just that mantra of, you know what, when the problems arise, we got a team of professionals. Here's our team. They're all here. We're putting together a great presentation. We got a website. Here's all our plans, you know, and we can't anticipate everything, but we're going to deal with it, you know, and just keep reassuring people when those problems come up, we're going to address it. We're not going to leave people hanging, you know, and I think that people will start to, you know, oh, okay. And then when they see the first building get built and the town doesn't suddenly close up shop and we can't come in here anymore, they're going to be like, oh, well, how about that?
If I could make a comment about the first building of the Amsterdam. There's no guarantee, even though it conforms pretty much with what the new housing study wants and says we need, there's no guarantee that I'll fill that up the first year. And part of the reason is those people are going to be looking for jobs. And if the jobs aren't available, they're not going to come here and stay. So that's a risk of the whole many on the list that I face. Yeah, I can build the building and then what do I do if it's only half full for 2 years? Even though the housing needs study says we need more than that. It's a matter of expansion and contraction of the local economy and what the needs are. And people who've asked for commercial space 6 months ago, it isn't here yet. They just went to Erie or Longmont or somewhere else where there is space. So they're not here now, even though they were interested at the time. So that's that's a fear I have. Probably nobody that has the fears of whether or not it's being built and what's going to happen has the same fear that I do. But I definitely will commit to you that if we have problems and we are receptive and will be constantly to the criticism and suggestions, and we've tried to be up to this point and will continue to try.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Ron. Okay. I guess we're going to need another motion to continue the meeting, wrap it up with the town staff report. So it shouldn't take long, but we can still go to 11 or at least make a.
All motion to go to 11.
Second.
Okay. Go ahead and everybody.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. We're gonna keep going. Okay, is it okay if I flip them? Can I do the BOT, upcoming BOT?
You can do them.
All right,
Yes.
I'm gonna flip it. So there's a lot coming before the BOT, but maybe I'll just do a quick highlight of what happened last night. We did do the housing needs assessment is officially done. The Bohannon Houston came and did a final presentation before the Board of Trustees. I shared it with you all. I hope you get a chance to take a look at the housing needs assessment. I think what really kind of stuck out to me last night was just an acknowledgement and a thanks to the town from Bohannon Houston that we did the commitments we were supposed to. So as a reminder, all that was required was to identify 4 strategies and adopt 1 ordinance. We identified 8 strategies and adopted 4 ordinances. So, you know, I again really reiterated, we just moved the needle slightly, but that's a huge accomplishment given that many people who have the same grant are doing just the bare minimum. And so Derek spoke quite a bit about just wanting to celebrate that the town was willing to put in the effort and put in the time. And I know it felt chaotic and really busy at times, but a lot of thanks to the Planning Commission for digging in with us as staff to get to this final report and being able to adopt those. Obviously, the report just showed a really long way to go. You know, we need more rental units. We of course need more housing. We need more diversified housing. We're at 92% single dwelling unit, you know, single family dwelling units. We really need to look at the triplexes, fourplex, and other alternative housing.
So,
Tiny home villages.
so what was the way the the Board of Trustees respond? Were they happy? Were they,
They were pleased with the outcome, but obviously we're like, and there's so much more work to go.
well,
And
true.
so I think their feeling is let's move on. So that by completing this portion, we open up funding. That was the whole point of this, open up funding under planning grants, go after the planning grants, keep having the conversations under Prop 123. They put it in their strategic plan that just because we adopted the study doesn't, now that means we have the data
Yeah.
to go seek the funding. So the board expectation of staff is to really just keep going and to go after the planning grants next, which will allow us to do even deeper dives into code and some of those things that we just weren't quite ready to start talking about because they were just so complex, providing us with the technical support to really start to navigate some of those more integral pieces like density bonuses or diving into the more of perhaps yard and bulk variations for tiny home villages so that maybe it does work a little bit more. But we need subject matter experts to come in here and help us. So that's where we're going. I've had a ton of great conversations with developers and nonprofits under Prop 123. They're like coming out of the woodworks, emailing me saying, we're interested in helping you. And so that's been great. And then I could also say, and look, we've got these wonderful ordinances that allow for administrative variances or up to 50% affordable housing variances. And people are really excited to see the work that we've done and how we committed under this. So very exciting development there. Last night was a long meeting though. We didn't get everything done. So we did talk, it's budget, but there was recently the property tax Senate bill that passed. So we can't actually adopt our budget until January 2nd for 2024. So we're still negotiating kind of final items. And some of the two big things that came out of last night is a commitment to hire extra duty officers who are focused purely on traffic control. So we will have extra up to 15 shifts per month at 4 hours per shift, where all that officer does is write tickets. So don't speed, or do speed because it's revenue. Either way you think about it. I don't care what you do, but that was very interesting. And then that's in addition to just the officers writing. But fascinating.
Can we get in advance on when those are going to be?
We'll give you a little heads up. Fascinating statistics have come out of this speed conversation. The average ticket, so these are the people who are caught, are driving 45 miles per hour in a 25. And that's the average. But just the other day, Sergeant Merriam and his team wrote a ticket for someone driving 78 in a 25. And so leaving town, just flying out of town. And so the fact that averaging is 45 plus is pretty wild. So
well, Scotty once caught 78 going through town. I mean, through the curve by the bridge.
oh,
That was
So it's
impressive.
happening right now, and people should know. And so obviously it's twofold. We recognize there is a revenue component, but really thankful for the police department and that it's safety above all. If we've got people driving 78 miles per hour and we can really start to demonstrate through our presence, like that's not tolerated behavior, that's not safe, and you're going to get the necessary ticket. That was really kind of the point. And then, of course, kind of the other benefit of that is that it is revenue. So that came forward. And the other cool thing is a car share program. So under car share, Colorado Car Share, they have an EV vehicle that's available to town because a grant fell through somewhere else that's going to come to town, and you can like reserve it to drive it wherever you want to drive it. As long as you are like an authorized driver and have been approved by them, you have access to, of course you pay a fee, but you have access to an electric vehicle to take you where you want to go. And it will be parked in the visitor center lot at one of our EV parking spots. It'll be a 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive vehicle with a ski rack. And you can rent it, and you'll be able to rent it and take it wherever you want to take it. Yeah, day trips, obviously, no overnights, but it's really cool. And the Sustainability Advisory Board brought it forward, and the board enthusiastically approved. And it does take a charger potentially offline for when it's charging, but just the benefit of what comes of this was worth it to the board. So that will come in the next month or two. So. It's a Colorado Car Share program, but they are in Boulder, and I feel like it's like somewhere in Eagle County that this program fell through. So they're like, hey, so it would normally cost us almost $50,000, and they're willing to do it for us for $6,500 to participate in this 1-year program. And then in the future, if it goes well for us, right now they get all the revenue from it, but if it goes well, next year we could do a cost share where we get a portion of the revenue. So cool development, but the budget's almost set to be passed, finally. A lot of kudos to staff though. They, at one point in time, we were looking at almost negative $400,000, and that was a rough space to be operating in, and we brought it down to negative 180 by coming up with really creative and alternative revenue streams. Everything from the sustainability and permitting fee, EV chargers will be, you have to pay for EV chargers now, paid parking. Yeah, we looked at, I mean, the whole point was like, let's not increase, we're not going to go to you as taxpayers and say, increase the taxes. We just did that. And so it's our responsibility to think of other creative ways. And then of course, staff did the necessary adjustments to really operate on not a bare bones, but just really what did they need to be successful to meet their strategic plan, and then also do capital improvement projects. So put a lot of work into this budget, and we're feeling very excited for it to finally pass.
Hey, before you move on, I wonder if you guys have the same issue as we do at our church. We often run a budget that is a deficit, but maybe at the end of the year, we don't actually have a $51,000 deficit. Maybe it's only a $22,000 deficit. Is that the goal, is to possibly not have it be 180,000 at the end of the year?
That's year after year. The town has always budgeted in the negative, and we've always ended up in positive. I mean, we're very fiscally responsible. Just because we budget, if we end up, it doesn't work, like paid parking, it didn't work for us this year to implement it. Well, we budgeted $30,000 for it. That money just sat, you know, we didn't reallocate it. It was meant for a specific project. So yes, the only difference is, and I say this out loud and then someone always resigns, we are fully staffed. For the first time, we've been fully staffed before, and then I've said it in like the next day, someone's like, Jenny, here's my resignation. So I always hesitant to say it, but we're fully staffed, and I can't remember the last time we were fully staffed. And so that's the difference, is that we've always had savings in salaries. There's no savings, fingers crossed, there's no savings in salary because we have all the right people.
Well, I only bring that up to say, like, we're going to have a congregational meeting for our church in January. One of the things we're going to hit is our deficit projected for 2023 was X, but we actually only ended up with this. So anytime you have the opportunity to say, you know, okay, our projected deficit for the previous year was this, but due to our thriftiness, it ended up only being, you know, whatever. You know, that's something worth mentioning. I think people like to hear that you're good stewards of the tax dollars.
Yep. So we, you know, I think that's the big thing is in Rita's reports that I always include in the packet now. I think that shows quite a bit that, you know, we always like budget that we're going to be in the negative X amount, but yet we're in the positive blank amount. So she does always highlight that, and that's in her report. And that's our intention. That's always our intention. It was a little scary though when we were budgeting so far and having a deficit. So we're back on track to being in line with what we've kind of historically done. So that's really all they got to. I mean, they did a couple more things, but that took up the majority of the time. So a lot of things got moved. So
the animal ordinance got moved?
Animal ordinance is set to happen on January 2nd. That's committed, January 2nd. The other thing that got moved was the tourism advisory board. We are recommending, as we look at tourism management, having an advisory board that would support the public engagement manager to navigate mindful tourism management, economic development, healthy growth, and having a team committed to that. But we did not get a chance to talk about that last night. The one thing that did get approved though was an employee handbook. So a couple changes. We're going to move to 410s for the majority of employees. However, that won't impact town hall. We'll still be open 5 days a week with staggering, and then actually 1 additional hour. So we'll be open from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then that first hour, staff will be able to work on other projects closed. So that's a new change, is trying to get as many people to 410s. It's a lot of studies about the benefits of it. So that's what we're trying. So next week, 2 weeks from now, the budget, we're going to approve it. It's going to happen. But the big thing is that the brand and creative identity for Nederland that Godot Communications has been working on will come forward with their first draft. So we would encourage you, all the conversations at this point will happen at the board level. So if you're really interested in that branding conversation, encourage you to watch or participate in that meeting. And then, of course, animals. You should come because you worked on animals. Now, animals is a discussion item. The board basically pulled out from having a public hearing because they want to do some work on animals. We did recommend last night to actually adding animal control to the Boulder County Sheriff's Office contract after all. While we're still not seeing a huge uptick in calls, they're so complex when we get them about who can enforce what and who's going to do what. And, you know, all hours of the day, night calls, and code enforcement doesn't run 24/7, that it just felt like it was a worthy expense to just say Boulder County have animal control. So they might want to start to amend it even more, knowing that animal control would be the ones to oversee that ordinance as a whole.
Yeah, we didn't put it in obviously because we didn't know this.
Right,
So,
so that's a change.
Okay.
And then the other thing next week is the town has been approached by Boulder County. There's a regional compliance program between all the jurisdictions in Boulder County to work together to execute and enforce affordable housing programs. The thing for us when we get Prop 123, you know, unless we're working with Boulder County Housing Authority, we're not in the game of regulating affordable housing. We're going to need support. And there's ARPA funds for a 3-year program through Boulder County where they'll come assist with the enforcement and oversight of affordable housing programs under Prop 123. So it's recommended by staff that we enter into this IGA to get that support for affordable housing enforcement. Then coming up on the 16th, 2 things. There's a vacancy on the Board of Trustees in case any of you are interested. You can apply. Friday, January 12th is when the applications are due, and they'll interview their candidates on the 16th. Here's the kind of example where they're taking a page from you is obviously Bobcat Ridge is getting ready to potentially submit their annexation petition. The Board of Trustees has invited them to have a conversation with them before they do. Because Bobcat Ridge has had a historical application. And, you know, we then, of course, changed the ordinance for how we run annexation applications. And they really just kind of want to talk through the process, share some of the historical data and the process they went through back when they did have an active application, and just have a pretty informal conversation about what this proposal could do for town and what the process is for them to go through. So if you're interested in learning more about Bobcat Ridge, that would be a meeting to attend. January 16th.
The second meeting.
From a town staff point, I kind of just covered, that's why I wanted to do the board packet first. I think the only other added things is obviously all of your ordinances went to the board on the 5th and they passed in one night. They don't like to extend to 11. And so it was like a begging, like, yeah, let's do this, get it done. So they did pass them all.
Because they were done so well.
I know. That's why I was like, just get them done. Don't kick it down the road. So that was a really exciting development. Otherwise, the other reports are in our packet. Of course, Public Works always does incredible things, but end of year time is time where we like to reflect. We write our budget memos. It's a great opportunity to really think about all of that we accomplished this year, which is, we'll give you the list once we're done compiling it. But a lot of great things have happened. And I think you're starting to see more consistency in staff. You know, I know we had some turnover, but you've got people celebrating these multiple years now with town. And so we're feeling like we're in a really great place to move on in 2024 and start to tackle all of these big projects before us under our strategic plan. So that's that.
What do you have coming for the PC in January?
Quasi judicial items. You have 2 minor subdivisions. We're gonna finally do Wingate, bring you Wingate minor subdivision, and then the Wolftongue Mill is looking to do a minor subdivision. And then a possibility of an SRU amendment for Dino Moves. And that came before you 2 years ago, year and a half ago. Potentially looking for an amendment to their SRU. And I think, is that it? I think that's it.
Yes.
So we won't see the preschool.
Oh, and
If everything is submitted in time, you will see that as well.
Could be a long meeting.
So
well, and we can always move Wingate.
Or we can just vote on it.
Well, let's just, yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
can
We
make
should
it.
put it on there and then if we can
It's
get.
on. I forgot to add it.
Okay.
It's on. Yeah, the dyno moves is really the unknown. So the due date for everything for an application is always the last Wednesday of the month. So we have a month. And so right now, yes, we know that applications are coming for Teens, Wolf Tog, and of course, we're running our own for Wingate. It's kind of up in the air whether dyno moves is ready to come. So, yeah,
Okay,
busy time.
that's it. Town staff report, everything. So I had a question. I noticed they're doing a lot of construction in the old bank. Do you have any idea what's going on there?
Yeah, he's gonna convert it into a restaurant. It's a restaurant. Like I don't want to say cafeteria style. Like when you go in, it would have multiple small stores in it, and then a drive-through burger joint. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't believe it either.
Yeah. So there's a kind of culinary team working on kind of the themes. Like it's almost a little bit cafeteria style, and that you would go in, you'd have multiple vendors that you could purchase.
Wow, you could eat in the vault.
You could eat in the vault. And maybe I have rumor of skee ball upstairs. I don't know. But-
Wow, I hadn't heard that in a while.
Yeah, we don't know yet.
Yeah.
We don't know all yet.
But we do know that there is gonna really be like a heavy culinary focus
Mhm.
inside.
Interesting. Okay. All right, any other business? If not,
Motion to adjourn.
and I will second that one.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All right, thank you,
10:46.
everyone. Have a pleasant and Merry Christmas and holidays, and